Hello, good morning everybody, and welcome to Guys in a Garage. Today I am here with, and hopefully I pronounce it correctly, Joseph Gaul.
That's correct.
Awesome. I have been known to butcher a name or two. It's glad to meet you, man.
Nice to meet you as well.
Yeah, mutual friend of ours put us in touch with each other, and so you are a retired homicide detective.
Yes.
Was it LA County?
It was Orange County.
County, California?
That's correct, yes.
Awesome. So I guess jumping right into some of these questions that I had. So what the show is about is, so to me, I'm a big fan of Joe Rogan. The kind of style that he does things is just very interesting to me. But, when I decided to do this, I thought, well, I don't know celebrities, and frankly, to be honest, I don't really care to talk to them because, what are they? It's just people that entertain us that have a bunch of money.
Right.
Who cares? What really interests me is real people that actually work for a living, blue collar stuff.
Right,
that's what kind of, gets my motor running, like, oh, what do you do? What do you do? Wow, that's really cool. So those are the things that just interested me and stuff that I want to learn about. So, there's nothing better. Screw celebrities. I want to talk to real people. So
it's a great concept. I think a lot of people probably listen for that very reason.
Yeah. Cause it's kind of like Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe.
Right.
You watch it on TV and it's cool because you get to see all of this stuff. But, even for what you see, I kind of feel like it's probably still, it's reality TV. Right. I think they probably do a good job at going over most of it in somewhat detail, but there's got to be a lot of behind the scenes stuff that you don't get to see. And Mike Rowe himself on several podcasts has talked about how he has, he always had another guy with a background camera recording things that they didn't necessarily want to put into the show because it wasn't, good for TV or whatever.
Right.
So there's actually stuff that you see that was from that camera where he said, no, we're going to record that anyway. And there were times where he said, no, put that in there. That's important. People need to see that.
Right.
So this is kind of like, to me, an add-on to that.
Yeah.
I'm talking to real people that do these jobs, and, I get to find out the behind the scenes stuff, or just, what it is, the mechanics of how it works, things like that. So,
right.
So the way, we can start anywhere you want. Some people like to go way back, from where they grew up, and kind of made them want to do what they do, if it's the chosen career path that they ended up in, or some people only want to talk about what they did, their last job or something. Wherever you want to go is totally fine. But we can start with my first question that I had was, what jobs did you have before being a detective?
Well, I started out doing restaurant work when I was a teenager. I grew up in Michigan. At 18, though, I joined the Marine Corps, and I was stationed at Camp Pendleton. And I was there for almost 6 years. I only started thinking about being a police officer just before I went in the Marine Corps. I never really did anything terribly wrong, but I did have contact with the police, and they were always treated me really good. And I thought, this is something I might want to do, and not really knowing too much about it. It was always on the back of my mind.
Yeah.
When I was getting out of the Marine Corps, the Orange County Sheriff's Department was doing this huge recruitment because the county was growing so much. They needed more patrol deputies. So I applied and went to the academy, and then I ended up being with the department for 28 years.
Wow. That's a long time, man. Yeah. It's almost 3 decades worth of doing that.
Yeah, it's sheriff's departments generally. I know it's a little different statewide, but the sheriff's in charge of the jails. So
right.
When you first graduate the academy, unlike city police officers who go right to their field training program, you get assigned to the jail to start. Now, I know they're changing that to where they have non-sworn staff in the jails, and then people go right to patrol in some states. I think that's how they do it here in Kootenai County.
So you mean non-sworn, kind of like civilian?
Yeah, they're considered custody officers.
Oh, okay.
They do go to like a custody academy, but they don't go out to patrol until they're patrol trained in some cases. And then it's more like a promotion where they're sworn and they're on duty out on the streets.
Gotcha. So so you worked for the sheriff's office then?
Yes, Orange County Sheriff's.
And did you start as like a patrolman?
Well, no, I started out in the jail first, and then after a few years, you're on a list, and as the list goes through, your name comes up, and you eventually get assigned to a field training officer, and you go out to patrol.
Oh, nice. So did you go through posts at all, or did your Marine Corps training count towards anything?
No, it was a post certificate through California to be certified as a police officer. Yeah.
So Marine Corps, what was your specialty there?
I was a radio operator assigned to a infantry battalion.
So like infantry radio communications?
Yes. Wear the big radio on your back along with your pack kind of thing. So our packs were generally heavier than everybody else's in some cases. I mean, unless you were a M60 gunner or something.
How much do those things weigh?
Well, I don't know what they weigh now. I'm sure they have way better technology, but they were about 25 extra pounds, plus the batteries were the size of bricks.
Oh, geez.
So you had to carry a couple extra of those.
So carrying a cinder block on your back or two?
Basically.
Along with all of your pack gear?
Basically. And then the antenna was really long, and if you were going through rough terrain, it was always getting snagged on stuff. But,
yeah.
I had a good time in the Marine Corps. I got to go to a lot of places that people pay a lot of money to go to, and do things in those places that costs some funds if you want to have a good time.
What was your best time in the military?
When we went to Panama for jungle warfare training, it was like an adult's jungle gym is what it really was. I mean, all the stuff you had to do, the rappelling down waterfalls, and, you had to do this man down drill where you carry the person around this little island and come back with them. You had to stay out for 3 nights on a survival trip. And they gave you an MRE in case you couldn't find something to eat. But you had a guide and so forth, and we were able to catch certain kinds of animals. We caught a wild boar. We went fishing, with just nothing.
It's like a shoelace and a stick?
Pretty much, yeah. And spears that the guide brought. But they cooked up a meal in a large bamboo chute over the fire, and it was really good. And, just that was just a fun time. I didn't consider it work. It was like just going on a trip, and, you learned a lot, but it was fun.
Yeah. Well, and that's with, really with any quote unquote job, if it's something that you enjoy doing, it's really not work.
Right.
At least I don't think so.
I don't either. I think it wasn't all smiles. I mean, the worst place I ever went to was Alaska in January for cold weather training, and that was a disaster for our unit.
Yeah.
It was just too cold and blinding snow, and we lost all kinds of equipment, and thankfully nobody got hurt, but they called it off. It was so bad.
Yeah, I hate the cold. I can't stand it myself. But better than being hot, I don't do well with hot either. Yeah. It's actually, I have more difficulty finding people to do the outdoor jobs that I have at my work. And everybody comes in and they say, oh yeah, no big deal. I can handle that. I used to work on a farm, or, I've had several guys that, oh yeah, I used to work up in Alaska doing this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, okay. And of course, within the first week or two, they're quitting because they're like, oh, it's wintertime. It was too damn cold out here. I'm like, I fucking asked you when I hired you.
Yeah. No kidding. Yeah. I mean, if you're going to work up here, be prepared for the cold at very minimum, right?
Yeah. When I tell everybody first thing, it's gotten to the point where I almost try to talk people out of the job. I'm openly honest about it is not fun. You are over 90% outside all the time. So, rain, snow, or shine, hey, tough shit. It's part of the job.
Right.
You either love it or you don't. And if you don't, I still expect you to do it, Yeah.
I mean, you're getting paid. It's not like you're hiding anything from them. I mean, if you even doubt for a minute that you can do it, maybe you should find another line of work. Yeah.
And that's like one of the last things that I tell people after an interview. I say, you know what? If you're lying to me right now, you're just wasting your own time and mine. So if this isn't the job for you, then just be upfront about it right now, because I can find somebody else.
Right.
And more often than not these days, that actually, the funny thing is just being that open and honest about it, I find just works so much better than trying to paint some pretty picture,
Oh, I believe that. Yeah. I would rather someone was upfront about a job that I might be taking.
Yeah.
I know I have at this age certain physical limitations. So
right.
if they ask me to lift something that's 100 pounds, I'm going to say, this isn't the job for me. I can't do that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. It just, more often than not anymore, just so many people, I don't know what it is, why they try to lie to get a job. And it's like, if you don't really want this job, don't take it.
Right.
Just tell me right now, it's not for me. Thanks for your time.
Right.
Why is that so hard?
Yeah. I think people get into law enforcement not realizing certain things. And I think, when we lose some people because of it. But I don't know why you would go into that thinking it was going to be all apple pie and ice cream, because it's not.
Right. What's interesting, you say that, it reminds me of another buddy of mine. He actually worked for me for a little bit. He worked as a sheriff as well. And I think he was only a deputy for about a year and decided to just get out of it because he just didn't like the politics of it and the bureaucracy and just some of the other stuff going around in the station. It wasn't his gig. And he said it was just a load of horseshit. It wasn't what he thought it was going to be. And so he's kind of a farm boy and stuff, and he'd been around metalworking and stuff before. So when he got out of it, he just decided, I'll go back to doing what I do best. Ended up coming and working for me, running, brake machines and stuff.
Okay.
He was really good at that, actually. But it always just blew my mind because you meet the guy and, I mean, unless he told you, you'd never know that he worked as a deputy. And then when he told me that story, I was like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. There's good, I would say most of the time it's a good job. You do run into situations that, especially now, my nephew's a deputy in Riverside County, and he compares what I had to do to what he does now, and it's night and day. I don't know that I could do this now,
right? Because
of all the troubles they have to go through every day with everything.
Yeah. Another buddy of mine for quite a few years was I believe he was a sheriff somewhere over in Washington, and same thing, it got to the point where Washington's laws had just changed so much to where you couldn't actually be a police officer anymore.
Right.
You couldn't do your job.
Right.
You'd get these guys that normally you would be handcuffing them and putting them in the back of the car. Well, they walk within 20 feet of a safe injection site, and now you can't touch them, because they're shooting up or whatever.
Yeah.
And
it's amazing to me, the stuff, the politics of overlooking things like that now and to say that it's doing any good is a lie.
Yeah.
It's not doing any good.
Yeah. All it serves is to allow people to continue bad behavior.
That's right.
I mean, that's really all it's doing.
Yep.
And I mean, does that mean that we don't need some kind of reform? Maybe. I mean, honestly, I don't know. I'm not a police officer. I've never been in that. All I ever see is, what's on Facebook and YouTube and social media and TV and everything else, just like everyone else does. But I know the experiences that I've had, and the logical brain says we can't just let people run around and do whatever the hell they want. There has to be law and order.
Right.
But I mean, maybe with today's society and our changes in technology and everything that we have, I mean, maybe there does need to be some kind of changes. What that is, I have no idea.
It's hard to say. I mean, they've gone from, putting in people in jail for a very long time. That didn't change it. They've gone to enabling them with these centers where they can freely use drugs. Enabling them. And it still doesn't work. So somewhere, with all the effort they put into other things that I consider dumb, you think they would come up with something that could help. I mean, jail didn't help because there's no real way for them to rehab and get off of the drugs because they're getting out so quickly. Yeah. They go right back to that behavior.
Yeah, they're not really rehabbing. Right. I mean, they go through some DTs a little bit while they're in there, and that might suck.
Yeah.
They get through that, and then within a certain amount of time, they're right back out on the street.
Yeah. When I worked in the jail, you'd see it all day long. I mean, a lot of people were in there for drugs, if not half of them.
Yeah.
And you could see they were kicking heroin or something, and, they're giving them methadone, which is a synthetic form of it, in doses so they don't die.
Right.
And it's amazing that you have to give someone a synthetic heroin so they don't die from withdrawing.
from heroin.
Yeah. And, it's just, it amazes me that they even survive in life.
Yeah. Yeah. My buddy that worked in Washington, he just had so many people that he ended up having to give Narcan to. And then when fentanyl really started coming around, and he saw, you even touch this stuff and you're ODing and you're flopping on the ground like a fish.
Yeah.
And he was just so sick and tired of it. He's like, man, you can't do your job, and you pretty much have to baby these people all the time. And then, as mean as it is to say, some people who are just habitual offenders or are just, they're done. They're on drugs for life. No matter what you do, they'll never get off of it.
Right.
They don't deserve to be here, or they shouldn't be here, because it's just a waste and a drain on tax dollars. Right. And that's basically how he looked at it. He's like, but I'm supposed to Narcan these people and take them to the hospital and, give them a free ride.
Right. And I think what people don't realize, because they're getting their info from the wrong sources, but
more than likely
these people that use habitually and are pretty much high all the time don't hold down jobs.
Right.
And they have to get their money for their drugs somewhere. So the epidemic really is car burglaries, residential burglaries, and then they sell this stuff so they get money for it. So people try to say, well, it's their choice if they want to be, a drug user. They're not hurting anybody. Well, they really are hurting people.
Yeah.
And to minimize it like that is disingenuous at best.
Right. Yeah. That's like Seattle. I won't even go anywhere near Seattle anymore.
No, me neither.
Which sucks.
Yeah.
Because that's where all the good concerts are. But you walk around down there anymore and it's just, homeless, addicts all over, just laying around with a needle in their arm in broad daylight. And hey, whatever. I don't care what you do in the privacy of your own home, but just laying around on the street, something's wrong with that, dude.
I would occasionally go to San Francisco for work. On a cold case I was working, and I haven't been back there in a long time. And my friend was telling me, he goes, man, I'll never go back there. That place is just a third world toilet now.
Yeah.
And he said, you got to, even if you stay at a nice hotel, you got to step over the homeless to exit the hotel to get anywhere.
Yeah, I've heard about that too.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Skid Row, but like the whole city.
Yeah. Yeah, they're just everywhere.
Yeah, just tents everywhere and just people laid out doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, one of the things we used to do, part of the job in patrol was, there's a lot of homeless in California. Just because of the weather, they don't want to be homeless up here in the middle of January,
right?
Because it's just too cold.
Yeah.
So most of them flock to California, places like that, probably Florida, warm places.
Yeah. Yeah, you can understand Venice Beach.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's warm all the time. Sure.
Yeah. It used to get sometimes kind of bad at the, restaurants and stuff. We'd have to arrest them for trespassing and things like that. And most of the time they'd go to jail, they'd get a citation and get released a couple hours later, and then they'd let it go to warrants. So a lot of these guys that are out there, they have warrants for certain things, whether it's burglary or possession of certain amount of drugs and things like that. Trespassing is usually the biggest warrant, which is not that big of a deal. But the problem is it's repetitive. They don't learn a lesson from going to jail for trespassing. They just go right back to where they were.
Do you find that a certain percentage of them maybe are on that path on purpose, because then they end up in jail where they get 3 hots and a cot all paid for?
I would say that does come into play quite often. We used to have a drug user, I can't remember his name, it was a long time ago, but he would come in every couple of months because he had warrants, and he looked emaciated, like terrible. And by the time he got out, he was fed and he looked healthy and went right back to doing what he was doing before. So that was his life. That was his choice to be that kind of a person.
Yeah. Yeah. You show up in the jail, you get fed, you get a cot to lay on, some TV, medical attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could see how somebody would just, why not? If you can do whatever you want to do and just habitually use the system so you don't die.
Yeah. It's
kind of sad.
It kind of goes back to what you were saying about these repetitive crimes. It's like we're rewarding them for this behavior by the taxpayer providing them with the food, clothing, and shelter for however long they're there, and then they keep coming back.
Right.
So it never solves the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish I had any idea how to solve the problem, but I'm not that smart.
Yeah, I might start thinking about it. Maybe I'll become a millionaire over the idea. Who knows?
Maybe. Have you ever thought about any kind of like political position, like a mayor or anything like that?
I haven't. I don't think that that's something I want to do. I think politics is so dirty. I mean, people have always said, well, it's always been dirty. Well, no, it's way worse now.
Yeah.
And I don't think I want to be glad-handing people and making deals with people. I don't want to do that. If I were to hold an office, I would just do what I think is right. I don't want to have to, shake hands with somebody and give them the nod because, they're going to help me out down the road with something I'm trying to get past. I just think it's kind of cheesy the way things are done.
Yeah, it's totally cheesy. I was actually just talking about this with my friend Luke a couple weeks ago. The glad handing and just the dirty politics of everything and how stuff goes down. It's kind of ridiculous.
I mean, when we first moved here full time, because we had this property before I retired, but when we got here full time, things just seemed pretty normal, and I was happy to be here, and I still am. I think this whole North Idaho College politics and stuff like that, it's just, gosh, makes me wonder, hopefully that's not going to be that way here, because I lived through it there, and it's awful there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I hope it's not going to either, but it seems anymore, especially when it comes to universities, that the problem is just endemic, because it's, that kind of stuff, it's like a fungus that just breeds through the entire school system at every level,
Right. And that it's something I think parents need to be paying attention to. What is your kid being taught right now in school?
Right. Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, the schools should be teaching, the basics. They should be teaching you how to balance a checkbook. As far as I know, they don't even teach that in high school anymore. They used to in economics.
Right.
Nobody uses really checks anymore. I still kind of do, but it's still something you should know until they're completely phased out of society. Right. But it's things like that, how to manage your money, how to budget, how to cook, how to take care of yourself, how to stay clean, how to do math, how to read, write, arithmetic, all of that stuff. That is what they should be teaching. Anything above and beyond that, that's your parents' responsibility.
Right.
As far as your moral compass and everything else, does that mean that we're going to have perfect people? No, because there's tons of shitty people out there that are going to teach their kids what they teach their kids.
Right.
But I mean, that's up to them. It's not up to anybody to tell me how to teach my kid and what I should be teaching them.
Right. I think the parents need to ask their kids, more often, what happened in school today? What did you learn? What did your teacher tell you? Because I think parents are starting to realize that they're being taught things in some cases that you wouldn't want them to hear.
Right.
I support teachers. I do have a problem with them sometimes, though.
Right.
Because I don't feel like they do a good enough job of policing their own.
Right.
The unions, they stick with them no matter what. And there are some people that should not be teaching.
Yeah.
Just like there's people that shouldn't be police officers.
Yeah.
I worked internal affairs, and I know some people I did not want wearing my uniform.
Or you worked IA?
I did.
Huh.
And I just think that the teachers need to step up. I read a report the other day that said 350 teachers in the United States were arrested for child molestation in 2022.
Yeah.
350.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That should have been 0.
Yeah. And, so if I was a parent right now and I had school-age children, I think I would be asking them every day, what'd you learn in school today?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a damn shame that it seems like people really don't anymore.
Right.
I mean, we just hand them cell phones and put them in front of the TV, and then, we're busy trying to work and everything, which, I mean, that's part of society. I mean, everything's so damn expensive anymore. Both parents have to work.
Right.
I mean, that sucks, but, what are you going to do other than vote?
Right. We can only hope that the vote goes a certain way sometimes, because I feel like we're in the wrong path right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that way. I think a lot of people, even people who, were on the, the left or in the blue, I think they're not switching sides, but starting to realize maybe the error of their ways. And I'm not going to sit here and say that they're completely wrong. I'm more in the middle. I lean a little more red, but I'm more in the middle, and this is another part of the show that I like, is to sit down and talk to people and hear different points of view. And most of the people that I talk to are more on the right, but you see different viewpoints about things. So, I mean, there are blue ideologies that I can say, okay, yeah, that kind of makes sense. But how does that work in conjunction with anything that's going on over here that also makes sense? How do we make these two things work together? There's another thing I talked about with my friend Luke is nobody wants to work together anymore. Everyone just wants to say, well, I'm right and you're wrong on both sides.
Right.
Because Republicans do some fucked up stuff too.
They do.
So how do we work this together where we're finally working as a team to say, okay, you guys have a great idea, but this doesn't make sense. So can we work it with this idea so that, you're never going to have everyone be happy, but how can we get the majority of people to at least come together and say, okay, this is going to work for us? It seems like nobody's interested in that anymore.
Right. And, I'm all for working together. And I think that's the thing you're right about. It's missing now.
Yeah.
We need people who kind of, conservatives are always going to have their idea of what is right to them. And so are people on the left.
Yeah.
But the happy medium should be, is this good for our country as a whole?
Right.
And that's where they should be focused on and working together, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting how things have been going and the way that they continue to go. Hopefully at some point, maybe we'll figure it out. So what was your training like in post? I've often wondered how that goes.
Well, the academy is, let me see, it's 4 months long. It might be longer nowadays, but it was 4 months long. You go to an actual academy and you are learning things that post requires you to know. It could be you learn the basics of things, such as, we have a day where you're doing car stops at this regional park and learning how to do those. And you have things where you learn how to search people properly, and you learn things about the law, mostly the penal code, the traffic code, things of that nature. So pretty much every day of the academy, you're learning things about the law and how it applies to when you're in patrol. As a deputy, when you first go to the jail, most of your training consists of how to work in the jail. You don't, and you have a training officer for 2 weeks, and they walk you around. They make sure you do everything the right way. But when you go to patrol is when a lot of the academy comes into play. As far as like knowing when you can arrest and what age can't you arrest and what age can you interrogate somebody out in the field, things of that nature. So you basically learn the rules, in the academy.
Yeah. But it would take far too long and way too much brain power to learn pretty much everything there is to know about the law. So is it just kind of like a condensed version of basic rules for being a police officer?
It is, and you always have the tools available to you. Sometimes when you're on patrol and you get a call and you're kind of like, this is a weird one. I've never had this before. You can always go back to the penal code and say, does this apply? Because it gives you the elements of the crime. You have to meet these elements for it to be a crime. So yeah, you just have things at your disposal so that if you get to a point where you're like, I'm not sure what I can and can't do about this. So you always have resources, including people who've been around a long time. You can get on the radio and say, hey, can you meet me over here? And you might pick their brain because they've been on patrol forever, and usually they'll have the answer.
Nice. So when you were on patrol, did you guys have the computers in the car and stuff? We
just started getting them, and they really weren't that good back then.
Yeah.
I know they have newer stuff now that works really good. It doesn't, we didn't use them much in our cars except to alleviate some of the radio traffic. You could put in a license plate into it, and it would tell you whether it was stolen, not stolen, unregistered, things of that nature. So we mostly used it so we didn't have to bother dispatch with like little things like that.
Right. Yeah. Instead of having to call on the radio and, tell me this, and then get all that. That makes sense.
And then you had it all at your disposal. So if you were writing a ticket or, giving them a warning, whatever it may be, you didn't have to keep getting the information from the dispatcher. It was all in your car.
Yeah. Yeah, my kid, she got in a little bit of trouble recently, and I thought it was interesting that the deputy, he had a laptop, and he's, doing a whole report on that, and then, they have like the little handhelds, and they have like a little printer in their car now, and so your ticket, they don't even use like the pocketbooks anymore. They just fill out everything digitally on this form, and then it prints out, and it looks like a receipt at Rosars or something. It's long.
I think I don't know if my former department does that. I know they get new technology all the time, but I remember having the ticket book. It was a metal book that you had to drag around with you everywhere you went. And,
like the big metal clipboard.
Yeah, right. But yeah, things are getting a little bit more technological than they should, because you're taking some of the, some of the learning out of it, I think, in some cases. The ticket itself has so many boxes to fill out, and it's kind of a reminder of what you need to know, so to speak.
Yeah.
Plus, technology can fail. Maybe they have a backup ticket book. I don't know.
Yeah. That's one thing that I think about often is, and I think it's proven that our technology has already started to surpass our humanity in some ways, because we look at it, as such a great thing that'll do all this great stuff for us, but it's vastly becoming like our controller, because we're relying on it for everything, and like you said, when it breaks down, well, then what? If nobody knows how to do anything because the computer always did it, well, where the hell are we then?
Right. My partner's much older than me, my former homicide partner, and he used to complain all the time, because he would say, he'd get reports with misspelled words and so on, and he would always say, spell check has made people lazy. They don't reread the report, or they don't care, one of the two, and because it's very obvious when stuff is spelled wrong, or the wrong word is used in this particular place because spell check corrected it and you didn't check it,
Right.
So that was a beginning for me to start thinking, well, he's probably right. They just rely on the computer too much.
Yeah, that bugs the hell out of me when I'm looking through like my Google News feed, and I'm, reading blogs or articles or whatever, and even articles in like, really noteworthy websites or something, and they look like they were typed by, someone who either doesn't know the English language, or did not have someone proofread it for them, or just, used where they talk into their phone and wrote the whole thing that way. And they just threw it out there. Didn't fix anything. And I'm not a huge grammar Nazi. I don't really care. But when I'm trying to read something and, every 10th word is spelled wrong, it's just irritating.
It is to me.
Like, could you not take 10 minutes to reread your thing before you put it out into the world?
Right. As a sergeant and down the road as a lieutenant, I would have to read people's reports all the time. And it bugged me in a way, because people aren't taking the time to read something before they submit it.
Yeah.
And not that it's a bad report. It's just you missed a couple things. And you probably, if you had any pride, you would have checked it first.
Yeah.
I hated turning in things before I proofread them, because you always find something, because you're thinking so fast and typing so fast, you're not really thinking about a word missing or so forth.
Yeah, I would imagine though. If you misspelled something or used the wrong word, or it's possible that could throw off an entire case, couldn't it?
Possibly, yes. If it doesn't make sense in the narrative, it could be an issue at trial. You could have a defense attorney saying, well, you put this in the report, that doesn't match up with what my client said or something. So you have to be pretty accurate. Right. If not 100% accurate is, what I strove for most of the time. Yeah. Unless I was just writing a quick follow-up to something, that was easy, I would still make sure it was good.
Yeah. So, what was your typical caseload like?
Well, as a patrol deputy, it's just day to day. You get calls for service. Sometimes you get a lot of them. Sometimes you don't get very many. And so your caseload as a patrol deputy varies in terms of how busy the day is. There's certain things that happen on each shift. If you work a day shift, you're probably going to get a lot of calls for like auto burglaries. People are waking up and they find their car has been broken into. Right. So you get a lot of those in the morning. So your caseload can be busy in the morning with things like that. if you're working in the afternoon, a lot of times now that the stores and things are open, you get a lot of theft from stores. The big cases, they don't happen very often. Surprisingly, though, my first day in patrol with my field training officer, right from the station, we had a murder.
Jeez.
That was my first call in patrol. So you never know what the day is going to be like.
Yeah.
Some days, a lot of times the days go by pretty easy. You get, minimum amount of calls, or some days you get a lot. But I think, those days where something really bad happens, thank goodness they don't happen every day.
Yeah.
Because those are the longest calls. And, you try not to be tied up too long because other people need you.
Right. Yeah. Not to put too much of your time into any one thing. Yeah.
When I got promoted to investigator, my caseload went way up in general investigations. I worked as a city investigator, and I got a lot of cases. Now, that doesn't mean you work them all, because if there's no workable information, you try to follow up with the victims and you ask them, is there any additional info? Because right now, there's nothing in here to point me in any direction.
Right.
So a lot of those cases are what we call a priority 4 case, and we clear them based on no workable information. So that's pretty much half your load, because like I said, a lot of things happen at night. People, burglarize cars. Nobody sees anything. There's no cameras. So it's hard to work something like that. And you may call forensics out to maybe fingerprint the car, maybe get a lead that way, and then be able to work it. But a lot of times they can't work every one of them because there's just too many.
So kind of like triage in a hospital, you're looking at cases based on what you can do for them, and that's how you're organizing them?
That's correct.
How much information you have, stuff like that.
Yeah, you look at it, and if you have a description or a named person, or maybe you get a fingerprint off something that you can run through the crime lab, and maybe they come up with a name. Maybe you have video cameras that you can look and you get a good picture of somebody. You can put it out to the media. So there has to be something there that you can move forward with. If there's nothing, then it's really hard to, like, finding a needle in a haystack sometimes.
Right.
So yeah, but there were a lot of cases I could work, and they would file them, and people would face criminal charges for things.
Did you find that you guys had enough people on the force to be able to handle everything?
Yes, in some cases. We run the county as far as the unincorporated areas, but we also have 13 contract cities that contract with the sheriff's department for police services.
Oh, yeah, because they don't have their own police services.
That's correct.
Yeah.
One of the things that it kind of depends on the city council and how much they want to spend on police services.
Right.
And that can get dicey sometimes. Your cities with, more money, they can afford to have a lot more deputies in patrol, more staff. One city, San Juan Capistrano, they were always short. Always. The city refused to pay for more deputies. And on a Friday and Saturday night, I worked Dana Point, which is right next to San Juan. They were calling us to help them because they couldn't handle the volume of calls that were happening.
Jeez.
And for whatever reason, I don't know why our department had never told the city, hey, you need to step up or we're going to pull out of this contract. That's what they should have done, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. So in terms of like defunding the police and all that stuff that's going around, what about training? Because my buddy that worked in Washington, that was another one of his bugaboos was, they want so much out of you. And, there were so many complaints going on about, bad police officers and this and that and bad policy and, they're not doing their job correctly. And his thing was like, yeah, I'll give you that. Sure. But one of the huge problems is there's not enough training. Like, you do your training and we only get it at certain times in X amount because it's what they can afford to pay for and stuff like that. So, it's kind of like a muscle. If you don't use it, you lose it.
Right.
You can forget over time. So, do you guys felt like do you felt you guys had enough training and that it was being done in the right increments so that you were getting it in a good amount of time, things like that?
I thought my training was pretty good. There's a period of times where there's a money issue and that's the first thing to go. And that's unfortunate. Training should never be the first thing to go.
Right. And of course, everybody keep in mind that we're talking, this was 30 years ago. This is not today.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know what the agencies do now, with their budgets being cut. I imagine they probably aren't getting as good of training as they should.
Yeah.
Because it costs money, and if they don't have it, they don't have it. I think that if you surround yourself with the right people, that can be training in itself. Look at the people who are successful in patrol. Those are the people you want to talk to.
Right.
If you're not getting it formally, then find the people that are doing well and surround yourself with them if you can. I feel like as far as training, patrol training was really was good. The only thing is, as an investigator, I think I got a lot of training. You're always going to something to find out there's a new way of doing something, especially as computers and cell phones became more prolific. There were classes on just how to look at them and what to look for. So, as far as my investigative world, I feel like I had good training, and I know a lot of agencies don't afford their people that, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if they're underfunded.
Right.
But exactly, if you're underfunded and you're not giving your officers the right amount of training, and you're not keeping it consistent, and they're forgetting things, what people don't realize is that, not only is, patrolman, it's a job that, just does not get enough credit. Right. In my opinion, it's a tough job. You're dealing with crackheads. You're dealing with burglars, murderers, wife beaters, child molesters. You're getting called for everything because that's your job.
Right.
You don't get to choose what calls you go to. Like, if you're in the area and the dispatchers picks you, then or whatever, right?
Right.
Then you're going.
Right.
So, it's not a job I would want to do. I would not want to deal with that shit. So, I have the utmost respect for anybody who chooses to do that. Anyone who chooses to go into military service and defend our country. Respect to every single one of you. And what people don't realize is, if you don't have the training to handle the stress of any one of those calls, then fight or flight mode kicks in.
Right.
It's adrenaline. Mm-hmm. And that's what that training is supposed to give you, is how to handle that response, how to train you to control that and stay aware and in the moment. And, okay, how do I de-escalate the situation with this person and remain professional and calm and keep them calm, but also protect myself and do what needs to be done if the situation arises where I got to do what needs to be done.
Right. It's something that you prepare for, in my opinion. I don't think everybody does, but I used to, on the way to a call that sounded bad, I would run it through my head. Okay, what am I going to do when I first get there? And I think that had a calming effect because I had a mission at that point. Instead of just driving there really fast and jumping feet first into it, I had an idea of how I would handle it. Now, did it always go to what I thought in my head? Most likely not, but
right.
I feel like it had a calming effect because I knew, okay, this is what I'm going to, this is what I might see, what am I going to do when I get there first? Yeah. And I think that helped a lot as far as being able to handle a situation with urgency, but not overreact to it.
Right. Yeah, mentally preparing yourself to handle what could possibly be coming.
Yes. I only had, in patrol, you don't get a lot of calls, for you do get, obviously, homicide calls because I worked there. We had a lot of them.
Right.
Not like, Chicago or places like that, but we still had our share of homicides. And, you see a lot of stuff that you can't forget. I don't know if people... I'm sure some people have seen some terrible things. Maybe they come home and find a loved one who maybe committed suicide, and people have seen that. But multiply that by 100. How many people I've seen who have killed themselves, just that alone.
Yeah.
And you walk into these houses and you see things that you don't forget.
Yeah.
Even years later when you're retired, I still remember a lot of the things I've seen.
Yeah, I imagine.
So people who, I think I hope police officers nowadays are being treated a little bit better from like a traumatic situation.
Right.
When I was there, did they afford certain time off for some things, such as, like an officer involved shooting, you automatically got 3 days off.
Right.
And you had to see somebody to evaluate how you felt about it, and then they would clear you to come back to work. Nowadays, it seems like there's so much more violence towards police. I hope they're getting some kind of support somewhere, because it's necessary. It helps you. If you want people to be long-term police officers and stay with the job, take care of them.
Right. Yeah. The support, that they're not getting from the people who call them,
right,
in any capacity. And honestly, that's what pisses me off so much nowadays, is all these people talking about defund the police, this and reform and all this, but what's the first thing they do when the shit hits the fan at any moment?
Call the police.
Call the police still.
They call the people they hate.
Yeah. You call the people that you hate to come deal with a situation that you are not either willing or capable of handling.
Right.
Okay, well...
Well, one of my, it's funny you bring that up. One of my biggest pet peeves, and I'll never understand this. These people would call our department for a child custody exchange. And it's just like, are you two that childish that you can't swap the kids without a problem? I mean,
unfortunately, yeah.
I mean, just do it for your child. You can hate the guy or you can hate the gal, but do it for your child.
Yeah.
But I hated going to those calls. I'm like, you can't act like adults for 5 minutes without me being here.
Yeah, that is sad. Extremely sad. I had a friend, him and his ex-wife. She was no prize, we'll say that. And she continuously would basically try to use the kids against him. And it ended up being where they had to get the custody agreement changed to where they had to meet at the Kootenai Sheriff's Office to do the exchange, because there were several times where she would just get irate and threaten to drive off with the kids and let him take him because he was like a minute late or something. But he had worked all day, and he would text her. He's like, hey, blah blah blah. He was always in contact with her. It was just a nightmare situation. And that's there's a lot of other stuff that she would do, and I'm not going to say that he's perfect. I don't know their entire dynamic, but yeah, it was horrible that you can't just be adults and just say, okay, no problem.
Right.
What do you really have to do that's so important that you can't wait 5 minutes? Because the same thing, if she was late, he would just be like, all right, I'll be here.
Right.
Because he wanted to see his kids.
And the kids have to live this. Yeah. Every time there's an exchange. How do you grow up that way and you start remembering things, and you remember that the police were always there every time you went with dad, and they were always there when you went back with mom, and that becomes part of your life until they're adults. And that just seems to me that, that you're doing more harm to your child than you are to your former spouse. Right. You're not hurting your former spouse any. You're hurting that kid.
Right. And what people don't seem to think about is that, kids, they learn through experience, kind of like animals do. They learn from what they see and what they hear, what they experience personally. And anytime that you're just talking shit about your ex or whatever, that their other parent in front of them, it's never good.
No, not at all.
If one parent or the other is a crappy parent, the kids are eventually going to figure it out. Unless they're so crappy that it's, you should have police involved, but they'll figure it out. Maybe not right away, but eventually someday they'll figure it out and they'll learn on their own. Like, oh, okay. I know people in that same situation, like one parent or the other would talk shit about the other all the time. And then the other one would never say an unkind word, because it's like, whatever, they'll figure it out.
Right.
And I truly believe that's what me and my wife have done with my stepdaughter. We never talk bad about her father in front of her. Right.
And that's the way to do it. Like you said, let the kid figure it out down the road.
Yeah. Just be adults. Be grown-ups.
Right.
Like, there's no reason for it. So in your homicide detective cases, what was it like interviewing suspects? Like, 'cause you always see it on like TV and stuff, but
it can be pretty intense sometimes if it's a big case, a highly publicized case, depending on who you're dealing with. A lot of my cases, interviewing was something I learned early on. I went to an institute for interview and interrogation, and I learned quite a bit there. And then my partner was a veteran of homicide, really good interviewer, so I learned things from him. Things you can do is depending on the person. You'd get some people who are really angry that they got arrested or they were anti-police to start with. So it's really hard overcoming that sometimes. You know, you try to get people to be at ease. It's not confrontational in the beginning at all. It can get there because, you know, a lot of times when you're interviewing someone, you know the answers to the questions you're going to ask.
Right.
And so you start forming kind of I would say, a small relationship with them. And, you know, I would talk to them about nothing, like football or something. And we had a habit of one of my partners would go and get all the paperwork, and then I would sit in the interview room with them, and I would just talk to them about anything. And I think once you establish the fact that this is not a confrontational issue between you and me, I'm here to find out something from you, and you have that information, and I want to hear about it. And there was only a couple people that I remember in my homicide career that wouldn't talk, believe it or not. My last homicide case, he was. I don't think I've ever seen a sociopath in my career to this extent. He just had this dark look about him, like he didn't care what he did and didn't care what was going to happen to him as a result. So
one of those people where just looking at him, you can tell.
Yes. You can't tell that with everybody. Some people put on a pretty good show, you know, but this was dead on sociopathic in my mind when I was looking at him, because no small talk, didn't want to talk, just this blank stare, like he knew he was going to get caught at some point, I think. I don't know if he was mentally prepared for it and would just stare it off in the distance. I don't know. I never got a word out of him except, what did he say? I said, "Hey, I'm here to talk to you about that car." And he said, "What car?" And that was it. He didn't want to say anything else.
Do you run into a lot of people like that?
Sometimes. I mean, usually it starts out that way. I've had people start out by saying, "I'm not going to tell you anything." And then somehow something comes up, you know, it's some kind of back and forth between you that triggers something, and they start talking. There's ways of getting people to talk. And I think in some cases, you know, maybe appeal to their better nature and say, you know, look, this is a bad thing. You know, you ask them, you know, we only have one side of this. Why don't you tell us your side? There's got to be two sides to this. And some people will talk, you know, after that, because maybe they feel you really do want to hear their side. And I do. One of the things I've learned early on is that a lie is just as good as the truth.
How do you mean?
Well, because if someone's lying to you, but you already know the answer to it, and let's say they don't know, but maybe you've collected some evidence that negates that lie,
right?
That goes into court, you know, at some point. If they might change their tune down the road because their attorney tells them to, well, it really is hard to do that because you've lied and you've been caught in a lie. So, I mean, you know, we used to view it. I know I had partners in the past in general investigations that would get mad because someone was lying to them. And my veteran partner, Steve, would say, dude, a lie is good. Embrace the lie, you know? So I learned. It's
still telling you something.
Yeah, it does. You're right. It's still telling you something. You know, it's not negating anything. It's adding to it, your case.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I've been wanting to talk to, you know, like a criminal defense attorney or something too, because just the ins and outs of our legal system and how things work, and like how people are kind of steered, you know, to say this or that, or don't say this or whatever. Like, oh, you know, we're going to get you out of this. Man, it boggles the shit out of me.
Yeah. You know, and it's funny, until you've sat through a trial, you don't realize how much latitude prosecutors and defense attorneys have. Like, I've sat there, you know, usually in homicide, you sit at the table with the prosecutor.
Yeah.
That way, if something comes up, like something controversial, he can tell me, hey, can you get on the phone with your team and have them go check this out real quick? We're going to come back to this after the recess, so I want to know if we can counter it. So a lot of times that's why you're sitting there, and to follow along with the trial. But it's funny how they have this latitude. Like, they can come up with a theory, and you sit there and you know the case backwards and forwards, and you're like, where'd you get that at? So they can, you know, especially if, like, say someone didn't talk, so they have to come up with a motive. And, you know, usually it's apparent. You don't really usually have to have them say what their motive is, because a lot of times it's an apparent motive.
Right.
But the way they come up with how things happen sometimes surprise me. but they're given that latitude to have a narrative to tell the jury.
Yeah. Man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time in courtrooms, I imagine.
Yes, quite a bit. Quite a bit. Not so much when I was in general investigations for smaller crimes. Most of the time people would plead guilty, and occasionally you'd have to go in because someone was fighting it. But
yeah,
in homicide, you're always going to trial 99.9% of the time.
Well, yeah, because nobody wants to get caught.
Right. And we only had one person just plead guilty like right away.
For real?
In my whole career, yeah. I mean, sometimes they would plead guilty down the road when they realize the evidence against them is just so overwhelming, and maybe they cut them a deal, and say, hey, look, if you plead guilty, we'll cut 10 years off of this sentence or something. But I only had one person just plead guilty, and she was a 94-year-old woman. This girl was her granddaughter with a child was staying with her, and the ex came over for custody exchange. Well, the girl had been telling her grandmother that he'd been molesting the child, and grandma got a gun, and as soon as he showed up and knocked on the door, she shot and killed him.
Jesus.
And she admitted it, and she pled guilty like 2 days later, and that was the end of it. But yeah, that was a complete lie. We never found anything in his background that suggests he was doing anything to that child. And
so you guys did an investigation and everything, and
yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, when we ended up arresting the mother of the child down the road, because once we learned that none of this was true,
yeah,
we charged her as a conspirator, and I don't recall how much time she got, but she did get quite a few years. I think 15.
See, and I wonder why the hell she would say that. Is it just because she doesn't like the guy anymore, doesn't want him around, so she's trying to fabricate some story to help keep him away or something? I mean,
yeah, it went back to the same old thing, the child custody exchange. She was mad at him. And it went back to that, as she was just trying to make his life a living hell. And probably based on what the grandmother told us, she wanted full custody and not share the child with him. So that was probably the motive, was if I can get this story out there, maybe I can keep him from having child custody.
Yeah. Which is horseshit.
Right.
People need to realize, I mean, it doesn't matter which way it's going, whether it's the woman with custody or the guy with custody or whatever it is on both sides. Again, be grown-ups, be adults about it, because, you say the one thing that isn't true and or you don't mean, but you're just trying to get your way, and then somebody can end up getting killed. Right. And it's I mean, to be perfectly honest, I can understand that old lady's perception of it, or why she did what she did. Yeah, she had no reason not to trust what her granddaughter was saying. Right. And she's she's an older generation who rightfully so despises pedophiles. Yeah. I don't know that she should have taken the business into her own hands, but I mean, I can understand it. Right. We asked her too, well, after she told you this, why didn't you call the police and report that he was a child molester? Yeah. And she said, I was going to handle it then and there. Yeah. That was it. And she probably thought, fuck it, I'm 94. I've had my life anyway. What does it matter? Right. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think she lasted 2 years in jail. She passed away shortly after her sentencing. Yeah. Well, and you said the granddaughter was, what, 15 years? 15, yeah. She got 15 for the conspiracy to commit murder. Jeez, man. So basically the child grew up without her dad and her mom, probably. Yeah. I don't know whatever happened to the child. All because they wanted to be childish about child exchange. Yeah. That's ridiculous. Yeah, it was one of them. I think somewhere down the road I counted, it was like 55 homicides that I either was the lead in or I was involved in. So that was one of many. Seems like a lot. It is. Yeah. To me. But I mean, compared to some other places like LA and Chicago, Detroit, that's probably nothing. Right. Yeah. A drop in the bucket for them. I imagine Detroit and or Chicago are probably the worst. I think Chicago's had over 800 murders last year. 800. Yeah. That's a lot. Well, and Illinois is trying to pass more gun laws and stuff. Right. There's a question. How do you feel about that? What's your stance on gun control? My stance is pretty straightforward.
you don't suppress lawful gun owners. There's already checks and balances in place to figure out who should have a gun and who shouldn't. Mm-hmm. You can pass all the laws you want, but the criminals don't care. That's why they're criminals.
Exactly.
Recently some of the officers that passed away from, were murdered on duty. My nephew, his partner, was murdered. This person was let out of jail. He's a felon, and he had a handgun. He didn't care. Yeah. He didn't care that he wasn't supposed to have one.
Yeah.
And that's my theory on this. You're not hurting anybody except good people by passing these laws.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that there's a lot of sheriff's departments in the country have said, we don't care what you pass. We're not enforcing it.
Yeah. Yeah, same. There's been several sheriff's offices in Illinois that have said, we're not going to enforce this. It's ridiculous.
Right. And, the recent one that they passed to, I don't know what they call it, like a support for a handgun. Mm-hmm. It's some kind of like shoulder support for people like maybe that are disabled and stuff. And now they're trying to pass this law that says you can't have those. The only people that are hurting is disabled people.
Right.
Veterans, other disabled people that use that, maybe they lost their arm in combat and this is the only way they can shoot for recreation or shoot to be able to defend themselves against crime. They're not hurting the criminals. They're not hurting anybody except these good people.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is it basically adds a buttstock to a pistol.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just think the rules are ridiculous.
Yeah, well, and just the way that they define assault weapon, quote, it's so stupid. It has a bayonet lug. Okay, that's an assault weapon? Oh, it has a magazine that holds X amount of rounds. Okay, but what's funny to me is that this, I think it was the Illinois law. So they want to basically do away with quote unquote assault weapons, which means pretty much any AR style rifle.
Right.
And when you look at what it is, the criteria that they're using to eliminate them, it's really just anything that looks scary they want to get rid of.
Right.
Stupid. Like there's no real reasoning behind it other than they're trying to posture and do something that they feel is good. I'll give them that. Okay, they're trying to do something, but it's not going to do what they think it's going to do. And then the thing that doesn't make any sense is that for rifles, they're limiting the magazine capacity to less than 10, but then handguns, 15. So a handgun, which you can easily hide in your waistband and walk up to somebody, shoot them in the head and walk away, you're going to allow to have more ammo.
Right.
Even though you could say that a handgun is not going to be as accurate from as far away as a rifle. So who cares if you have more bullets? You're probably not going to hit anything. I mean, now you're just splitting hairs, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, handguns do as much damage as an AR-15, if you're the wrong person that's holding it.
Yeah.
I think that it's so misguided because weapons, besides fentanyl, weapons pour over the border all the time.
Yeah.
So there's no shortage available to the criminals on the street.
Yeah.
And they don't care that it's stolen. They don't care that it may be used in furtherance of another crime. They don't care. And, people like me, I want to have a chance to survive. And so I should be able to carry a handgun, which I can. But I think just your average person, you shouldn't have to beg to carry a gun.
Right. Yeah, you shouldn't.
People have the right to defend themselves, and the police can't be everywhere. And even if they are close by, minutes count.
Oh, yeah. Seconds count.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. When seconds count, police are minutes away.
Right.
You've heard that before, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, where I live, I mean, unless they're in the area, it could take 30 minutes for them to get to my house. And by then it's going to long be over. Yeah.
I think all this gun control stuff is just, it's horseshit.
Yeah.
It's horseshit posturing that doesn't need to be had. And people say, this whole ideology of just getting rid of guns and getting rid of weapons and all this stuff, we don't need them. You can't uninvent the wheel.
Right.
It's already been made. Any gun is a tool, the same as a hammer, a shovel, a bow and arrow, anything else. It's just highly effective at doing what it was designed to do, which is kill.
Yeah.
But it's still just a tool. It doesn't do anything on its own. It has to have somebody operating it.
Right. You're exactly right.
My favorite memes are the ones where a guy is standing in fear in front of a table of guns, waiting for them to jump up and kill somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think the anti-gun people, I don't know what they're thinking. It's just like, what if I stab somebody in the neck with a pencil?
Yeah.
Is it now an assault pencil?
Right. Yeah. Anything can be used as a weapon.
Right.
I mean, really, if you know what you're doing, or even if you don't, if you're enraged enough to grab something close by and bludgeon someone to shit with it, I mean.
Yeah. Coming from a law enforcement perspective, I can tell you that I pulled people over, or I went to houses to do searches. We found so many felons in possession of guns.
Yeah.
It's unrealistic for the anti-gun people to say that crime will go down if we take guns away, because they get them.
Yeah.
It's a stupid theory, in my opinion. And for someone to say, well, what do you need an AR-15 for? I don't need one.
Yeah.
I want one, and I'm legally able to have one. And who are you to tell me that I can't have it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's horseshit. When you hear the argument so many times about how Australia, after they had their big massacre, that they outlawed guns and all that stuff, and that their crime rate has gone down, which I've heard left and right so many things that say, no, that's not true. Their crime rate went up because everyone, like criminals, know that good people don't have guns. They don't have a means to defend themselves.
Right.
That's the same way I look at it. Criminals, for how stupid they can be, are very crafty.
Right.
And they're going to figure out what they need to do to get the tool that they need to get the job done.
Right.
I mean, this is how it is. So again, you can't uninvent the wheel. And here's the thing: is Australia, it's not a landlocked country. There's ocean on all sides of it, and they have really good border control. They're checking every ship and every plane that comes in there. Like, they're actually pretty good at what they do. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the United States, which has Canada right above us and Mexico right below us, which is where a lot of this stuff comes from.
Right.
So I have friends that are like, yeah, we should just open the borders. Why should we tell people where they can and can't go? And I'm like, I 100% am okay with people coming here legally. If you go through the steps, you apply for citizenship, you get your visa, you learn what you got to learn, all that stuff. Cool. Sure. I don't have a problem with that. There's a lot of good people from a lot of other countries that come in here and do great things.
Right.
But when you have people just pouring in here left and right, unchecked, that could be doing God knows what. And I mean, a lot of them are probably just looking to make a better life for themselves and their family. Cool. But you also have to look at resources. We don't have the resources to feed and clothe everybody.
Right.
So it does have to be controlled somewhat.
Yeah. And, we have a hard time in this country sometimes taking care of our own people. And yet we're pouring money into situations where, they just came across with no repercussions to it.
Yeah.
And now we're housing people and feeding them and clothing them and giving them medical care, all at our expense.
Right.
And like you, I don't have a problem with legal immigration. I don't.
Yeah.
But that's not what's happening at the southern border.
Right. Yeah. So in terms of wanting to get rid of all the guns, you're never going to do that here.
Nope.
Because they're always going to be flowing in from either north or south. I mean, more so south.
Right.
Because we can't control what Mexico's border policies are. We can't control their ports. We can't control what they're doing. And so the cartel, a bunch of criminals, again, criminals are really crafty. They're going to figure out how to dig tunnels under our walls. They're going to figure out how to fly or float that shit over here one way or another. They're going to make their money.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get rid of it, no matter what this utopian society view you have is, with no guns and everybody's just nice to each other. It's not going to happen. It's not human nature, unfortunately.
No. And I wish people could see it from a law enforcement perspective.
Right.
These folks that want to take things away from good people, because we see the criminals with these things all the time.
Yeah.
That they shouldn't have. So.
Yeah. So you kind of touched on it a little bit, but so knowing what you know now, do you have a sixth sense about people?
I think I do. When I was on the job, you could, kind of sense things, posture, the way they talk, or the way, they move their head and stuff. You would kind of pick up on that, somewhat evasive kind of demeanor.
Right.
And just by the way they might answer questions, you can pick up on it. Usually you can tell people that are reluctant to talk because maybe they're afraid. And you can pick that up because, say you're in someone's house and let's say you're there for a domestic violence call. And in this case, let's say the wife is the victim, and you're in the house with them. A lot of times, right away to take them outside or find a private place to talk because they don't want to talk in front of the person who's abusing them.
Right.
So you can kind of sense that about them. They talk really low or they kind of look around when they're talking. You really kind of have to be aware of that.
Yeah, I imagine you probably learned a lot about just being able to read people.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of times you can tell when someone's about to run, so you try to get handcuffs on them right away.
Yeah.
You can see that nervous posture, and the looking around like, what way am I going to go?
Right. Yeah, I mean, growing up, I was always kind of taught, not only respect your elders and things like that, but I mean, respect law enforcement, stuff like that. Because again, you guys are doing a job that nobody wants to do and you get shit on quite a bit. So, I mean, I've always kept that in mind, but also, I mean, if you get caught, keep your mouth shut, don't talk. But honestly, I've never had a bad experience with any police officer. If I gotten pulled over for a traffic ticket or something, I mean, 9 times out of 10, I just tell them like, yeah, my bad. I was going too fast.
Yeah.
And I've never had a bad experience. And yes, you get pulled over and your adrenaline's up a little bit because, oh shit, like what's going on? What I do wrong? Mm-hmm. But I've always just tried to remain calm, keep my hands on the wheel and not do anything that's going to put them in a mind state of like, oh shit.
Right.
Because again, they don't, when you pull someone over, you don't know what you're walking into.
Right. You don't know who it is. They could be wanted for anything.
Right.
You don't know. I mean, people use the term routine traffic stop, but there's nothing routine about pulling a car over.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're going to encounter. And most of the time, things go well.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't. I rode a motorcycle for about a year, and I realized I didn't like it.
A motorcycle officer?
Police, yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, so one of my years in patrol was on the motorcycle, and I didn't like it. I got off of it after a year. Nobody's ever happy to see a motor officer because it's usually traffic related, if not 100% of the time.
Right.
And I didn't like the negative contact. People were really defensive all the time, and if I always think of it this way, you don't argue your case on the side of the road.
Right.
It doesn't do any good.
Yeah.
Because if you're getting a ticket, the place to argue that is in court. And if you win, good for you.
Right.
If the officer's wrong, then it gets dismissed and you go on your merry way. I didn't like the fact that there was a lot of people that wanted to argue with you from the minute you stop them.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times I would just give warnings.
Yeah.
I gave tickets, but there's times when I didn't. I just wanted to slow someone down, or sometimes you do a car stop in the middle of the night because you want to see who's that coming out of the school parking lot at 2 a.m. and why. Yeah. So those kind of investigative stops are always interesting. But as far as the motor was concerned, I told the chief, I said, this isn't for me. And I went back to a black and white until I got promoted to investigator.
Yeah, and like being on a bike too, like if you're in a traffic stop, you don't really have any protection either if something goes bad.
Yeah, you really just have your car, you know, and you kind of offset it so you don't get hit by traffic for one.
Right.
Because drunks in the middle of the night seem attracted to those yellow amber lights.
Yep.
So you use
they're like moths.
Yeah. So you get the vehicle to protect you, but from the driver or anybody else, you're kind of wide open.
Yeah.
And anybody who's ever been pulled over, you can see the officer walking up in your mirrors.
Yep.
So the element of surprise is in their favor if they're planning on shooting or doing anything.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you that just if you're being stopped, just there's no reason to argue, and give an officer just the same modicum of human decency and respect that you should be giving anybody else. Because at the end of the day, you guys are just doing a job, and your job is to serve and protect. And if you're stopping somebody, are some of our laws stupid? Sure. I mean, I don't agree with every single one of them, but hey, whatever. You guys are there making a stop because someone's got a tail light out or a headlight out, or, they didn't stop fully at a stop sign or something, whatever. I mean, that's a real thing. If you didn't stop, you didn't stop.
Right.
It is what it is. You got caught. So just be a grown up about it and just be respectful and say, hey, how are you? You know, how's your day going? Blah, blah, blah. And that's all I try to do, is just some decency and respect and understanding.
Right.
And again, I've never had a bad experience usually doing that. I had an officer once, I got stopped for a bad taillight in Spokane once. Totally cool with the guy. He was a really nice dude. He didn't give me a ticket or anything. He actually helped me replace the bulb right there on the side of the road, because I had the tools and the bulb in the back, you know, because it went out all the time. So
yeah.
He was a really nice guy.
Yeah. You know, you never go into a traffic stop thinking it's going to be confrontational. You don't want that.
Yeah.
You know, you try to be calm, because people are, already kind of a little nervous because they got pulled over.
Right.
So you don't want to agitate the situation any further.
Yeah.
You know, and I just greet people and say, how you doing? You know, this is why I stopped you. This is my name. You know, things of that nature. I would say most of the time it went pretty well, but there's definitely those days where people just don't want to be pulled over, and they unload on you verbally most of the time. You know, so it just comes with the job in a way. You know, a lot of people make it. This is the one thing I don't like about, you know, when people say, well, you know, you signed up for this, you know, well, no, I didn't sign up to be verbally abused or beaten.
Right.
That never was part of the job. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
I never, you know, people don't sign up to die in the line of duty.
Right.
That's not something they're hoping will happen. That's not part of the job.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it can happen, but it's not what you sign on for.
That's right. And I think if more people thought about it that way, there might be less violence towards the police. You know, we're just there to do what we can for the cities we work in, you know, to make them safer. I mean, if you didn't have any traffic officers, oh my gosh, can you imagine the anarchy with people driving?
Oh yeah.
They already drive terrible, a lot of them.
Yeah.
So can you imagine if you didn't do any traffic enforcement, there would be no deterrent to drive any way you want.
Yeah. Imagine Spokane with no patrol officers and no signs.
Right.
It'd be fucking chaos.
It would.
I would never drive over there anymore.
So
I don't now.
There's reasons for it, you know, and people don't like the reasons. They don't want the government telling them what to do in some cases. And, you know, the police are kind of the forefront of the government to them.
Yeah.
And, you know, how dare you stop me? You can't stop me. But I know there's several times where I remember the traffic enforcement being very warranted. You know, you get calls from the schools and saying someone almost ran over our crossing guard.
Oh yeah.
Someone just almost ran over our crossing guard. So you would, chief would say, hey, I want you to go hang out at this place for a couple of days and see what's going on. And they were right. People were running stop signs. The last thing we want is for a little kid or anybody else to get run over.
Yeah.
You know, so I think some people get mad about stuff like that, but why would you? What if it was your children going to this school?
Yeah, and some asshole just drove through doing 100 miles an hour because they don't care about your kids.
Right.
Yeah. Selfish people.
Yeah.
What was the worst traffic stop you ever had?
We had a girl that was kidnapped from LA County, and they were coming down the freeway, and they ended up in Orange County. The girl who was driving, so the girl that was kidnapped was in the back with her boyfriend, and the girl that was driving was her friend, but she didn't realize this was all going to happen. The guy ordered her at gunpoint to drive south. He was going to take her across the border.
The boyfriend?
Yeah.
Oh.
So we were told it was heading south on the freeway. The girl who was driving just stopped in the middle of the freeway and jumped out and ran down the off-ramp, and that's how we heard about it. And so we ended up getting behind the car and doing a traffic stop, and he was biting her ear off, and it was really hard to get him out of the car.
Jeez.
So that was probably the worst car stop I've ever had to do as far as saving this girl and getting her out of the car.
Yeah.
Because he was trying to stab her and she was fighting him off. So yeah, that was the worst one. Most of them went pretty good. You know, I would say I survived them.
Yeah.
You know, I've had a couple others where people would run. They were wanted for something. I had a stop where the guy was wanted for murder and took off running, but thankfully we had so many people in the area at the time we were able to get him in custody.
You have like Good Samaritans take somebody down while you're trying to chase them?
I have had that happen once. We were chasing somebody through a commercial, like a strip mall, and somebody was just standing like in front of, I think it was Target or something, and we were chasing him, and they knocked him down.
Nice.
Pretty big guy to get knocked down by too. He was big.
Hey, stick out a leg.
Yeah.
Did you ever work any serial killer cases? Yes,
briefly. They recently arrested a gentleman for serial rapes and murders in California. He went by different names. Initially, he was called the East Area Rapist up in the Sacramento area. And then he branched out and he started murdering people as well. Then they renamed it the Golden State Killer.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. One of my partners was working on the case, and I got a chance to kind of read a little bit about it and help him a little bit on it. We only had one case in Orange County that was related to him. And that's how we even got involved, because most of the stuff he did was north of Los Angeles. Somehow he ended up in one of our cities in Orange County and committed the murder of 2 people. And that's how he was connected to our county. But most of his cases were up in Sacramento area.
So you guys only worked the one case that was from your area? Yes,
but also collaborated with the other agencies. It was kind of a, I wouldn't say regional, because it was more of a statewide task force. And we contributed basically just evidence such as, DNA that was collected and things like that, which matched him down the road.
Yeah, I heard about that like they just recently caught the guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to say it was 2017.
Yeah.
And he was, there were so many, I don't even think that they know about all of them. But it's funny, one of the things I saw was when they actually took him into custody. This guy was older, but he was working on his yard. He was doing landscaping. He's walking around. He goes to the grocery store. But then as soon as he comes into court, he's in a wheelchair. He's got an oxygen tank, like he can't breathe without it. It's just so, it's like this lame attempt to get sympathy from people. I don't know, but it's just like, that's the kind of stuff I didn't appreciate about defense attorneys.
Yeah.
You're trying to, put lipstick on a pig. This is a serial killer, okay? And he was just walking a day ago, and now he can't walk and he needs oxygen?
That's shady.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because you wrap a turd in gold leaf doesn't make it not a turd.
Right.
Defense attorneys, they grind my gears. Like, I can understand, like, public defenders, maybe they don't get to choose much of their cases either. They kind of get thrown at whoever can't afford an attorney. I don't know. Again, I don't know shit about the legal system, really. But, anyone who's hired to defend somebody, especially when it's glaringly obvious that they're a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And you're just trying to do whatever you can do to get them off.
Yeah. Yeah, I had, there was a few that I had a lot of respect for. They were pretty, they were just doing their job, and they weren't trying to, there's that old saying that if you can't attack the facts, attack the police. So there are people like that out there that will put you on trial when you're taking the stand and giving testimony, to put you in a bad light if they possibly can. And if you're easily rattled, sometimes they succeed in making you look bad.
Like they try to attack your character and maybe pull up your service record and try to dig for anything, stuff like that.
Correct.
Try and make you look like the shady person so that they can discredit your statement.
Correct. And sometimes they flat out lie. They can, I've had, not me personally, but I've been in the courtroom when they've flat out accused, like, say, a deputy, well, you planted that, didn't you? Didn't you plant that? And there's no indication he planted anything.
Yeah.
But they can use that. They can say stuff like that, which I think I don't agree with. You better have, to me, I think you better have some proof.
Right. Before
you say something like that. And they don't have to, and that's a shame that you can attack somebody without having any proof of it.
Yeah, that is horseshit. Well, and I mean, it seems like half the time they only do it because they know that even if it gets objected, they're still planting that seed in the jury's mind.
Right.
Yeah. Which does affect that, which I always thought was dumb, because they can say, oh, jury, strike that from the record, disregard what he just said. I mean, we're human beings. Once it's in there, it's in there. Right. You're still going to be thinking about it.
Right. And you can't use it to deliberate, but it's still in your mind.
Yeah. It's hard to just erase what you just heard.
Yeah. My last homicide case was a death penalty case, and the suspect had murdered 2 people just to get a car from them.
Oh, geez.
And I remember the beginning of the trial. It was such a good put together case that the defense was like, we're not here to say our client didn't do it. So they already admitted that he did it to the jury. But their biggest thing was they wanted to avoid the death penalty. So they brought in all these people to say what a great guy he was. And it's like, he's not a great guy. He executed 2 people over a car.
Yeah.
And good thing is the jury wasn't buying it, but that's the kind of thing I don't like. It's like you're trying to, paint this person in a good light. They're not a good person.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. God, what is even the motive behind killing 2 people just for a car?
That was it. He had done it once before, and he left someone alive, and he thought he was going to prison, but it was never pursued. He had gone on a test drive, Mercedes of Long Beach, and so the dealer went with him, and he ordered the dealer out at gunpoint and took the car. Well, he parked it in his apartment complex, but Mercedes can activate the GPS on any car that they have. So they figured out where it was. They went to the car. Mercedes of Long Beach didn't pursue it because there was nothing wrong with the car, and they got it back. Well, he left someone alive in that case, and he got pretty lucky because he probably would have been doing 15 years in prison and wouldn't have been able to commit these murders. So he decided, and this is just me speculating because based on what I know about him, because he'd never admitted to anything, the speculation is that he almost got caught once, and he wasn't going to let that happen again. So he executed these 2 people over this Lexus that he stole from them.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. Those kind of people, do some people deserve a second chance? Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
If you didn't do anything crazy, sure. But people like him, they do not belong on Earth.
Yeah.
They need to be done with.
Yeah. This whole thing with doing away with the death penalty and stuff, whatever, you can think about me what you will, but some people do not deserve to be on Team Human.
Right.
I mean, some people literally should just be done with and buried underneath the fucking prison.
That's what I agree. And unfortunately, it might sound inhumane on my behalf, to say something like that, but I agree. There are people that don't belong among us.
Yeah. Yeah. And the only thing that ends up happening when you put somebody in for life is we pay for them to be alive until they die.
Right.
And so they just become a burden on society for no good reason. And anymore with, prisons being privatized and corporate. So then what? Somebody's making money off of having that person in prison.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be punishment, but it really isn't.
Yeah. Not anymore.
Yeah. It's funny that, even back then, people it was a revolving door in and out. Mm-hmm. That was their life. And it's almost like I was telling you earlier, they get burnt out, they go to jail, they get healthy again, and then they get out and they go right back to it. Yeah. I really think that we're not doing enough, as far as, the punishment. I always agreed that if you're a child molester, you should never see the light of day again.
Right. Yeah.
But they get light sentences for some reason. Yeah.
Well, in these days, they're trying to say that it's a sexual orientation and that, they can't help it and blah, blah, blah. Like, we can reform them and no, you can't.
No.
Now, I mean, there are some things that I've heard where in certain cases, like they know that they have these tendencies and these thoughts, but they never act on it. And they know that they're messed up in the head. Yeah. So something like that, I guess, I mean, there's always that chance, right?
Right.
But if someone has some kind of a brain disorder or they're just wired a certain way for whatever reason, and one of the studies I was looking at was, or maybe it was something I heard on another podcast, but it's like between the ages of 7 and 10 is where you're the most susceptible to be wired for certain things if you're exposed to it. So if you're exposed to any kind of sexual media, or if you're abused or something like that, 9 times out of 10, you're more than likely going to become an abuser yourself, or be drawn to whatever that stimuli was that you encountered. Right. For some reason, it just gets burned in there. So when you look at certain pedophiles that know they have this thing inside them, these thoughts, but they know it's wrong. Those are the ones that are just, it's weird to me. And I don't know how to feel about those ones. Because, I mean, you know, in terms of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, I mean, we can't just lock people up for having thoughts about stuff.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess that's between them and their psychologist.
Right. And as long as you don't victimize somebody, if it's just things you're thinking about, and you can't be the thought police. We can't, like you said, we can't arrest you for something you might do.
Exactly. Once we turn into Minority Report in, 1984, then
right.
I think we have real issues. But
yeah, I think that would be going down the wrong path if we were given the ability to do that. In fact, I wouldn't even agree with it. I would be hard to enforce. I mean, how do you enforce that? But if you victimize somebody, then you get what you get.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, once you've done the act, then you're up. Your time's done. Yeah. Your card's pulled.
Yeah, just too many of them repeat, and now you've victimized 2 kids instead of being in jail for the rest of your life for victimizing 1.
Right. Well, and then and like I said with them now, looking at this as a sexual orientation. Well, they're also saying like, well, they're the real victim because something happened to them. Okay, that may be true. That may be true.
Right.
But then they need to get help, and they need to learn how to control themselves and deal with it and not victimize other people.
Right.
Once you've done what you've done, you're now just as bad as the person who hurt you. And the person who hurt you should be buried underneath the prison just as much as you should be.
Right. There was a case here that I was pretty upset about. Not anymore because he ended up killing himself, but he was an admitted child molester. He admitted to I think the sheriff's department here handled the case possibly, but he admitted that he had been doing it, and he was in jail, and somebody bailed him out. How do you, it's a business owner here too.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that?
I think I heard about that.
I think they own gas stations or something.
Yeah.
But they bailed him out. How do you justify bailing out an admitted child molester? And then he killed himself. So I guess the people win in that case. But
yeah, right.
I mean, I would, even if it was my family member, I'd be like, no.
Yeah.
You admitted it. Now, if you're saying I didn't do it, I'm innocent. I never touched anybody, and someone bails you out because they believe in you, that's one thing. But he said he did it.
Right.
So.
Yeah, you don't even need evidence on that one. Right. He's like, yeah, that was me. Yep, I did it.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's hard to wrap my head around why you would bail someone out like that.
I guess people are weird, man. People have, I don't know, what do you call it? A soft spot for some reason, for certain things.
Right.
And maybe it's one of those instances where they're like, oh, well, he could be rehabilitated. Oh, we could fix him. Like,
probably not.
Yeah, that's not what most studies show. How you doing over there? You need a break? You okay?
I'm doing good.
Okay. We're like over an hour and a half at this point. So. What was the weirdest case that you ever had?
The weirdest case was...
and or worst case. We can probably put those two together.
The worst case, we had this family, the Ucar family, was a murder-suicide. The family lived in Northern California and hadn't heard from them in a while when they generally talked to them every day. And so they had the deputies do a welfare check, and the house looked normal. And you don't generally break down a door unless you see something suspicious.
Right.
And they didn't on that day. Well, the family couldn't wait any longer, and 2 weeks later they came down from Northern California, and they broke a window so they could unlock the door. Well, instantly, the smell of death was in the air. Yeah. And so they called us, and we went down to the scene, and it was a shame because basically what they did was both mom and dad were doctors, and their twin daughters were trying to become doctors. And I guess one got into medical school and one did not. And it was like an embarrassment for the family in a way. So they all decided, they made a pact, and the mother watched as everybody overdosed on prescriptions. There were so many prescriptions in that house. I don't know if they were abusing them or what, but there were so many pill bottles in the bathroom. So they all willingly? Yes, and then the mother killed the husband and then killed herself. Jeez. And so these 5 bodies were in this house for 2 weeks. No air conditioning on. It's August. It's hot. Yeah. And, when we went in, it was like one of the worst things I'd ever seen. They were black and bloated, and it was just terrible.
I imagine that's one of those things you don't forget.
Yeah.
Well, just the smell of death alone.
Yeah, it was bad. There were so many flies in that house. It was just disgusting bad.
Ugh.
As far as probably the worst murder I ever had to go to was Sonia Dawes. She was 11. Her uncle had stabbed her repeatedly because he was mad at her mother, his sister. And think about how do you bring yourself to kill a little kid like that?
Yeah.
She was just 11. And, when I went to that scene, it was tough to see a little kid murdered like that.
Yeah, that would be.
Yeah. So, I'd say that was probably one of the hardest, too. They're all kind of hard,
Yeah.
But you get to work, and I think that takes your mind off it. As soon as you have a mission, you start working it, and you have time to maybe think about it later, but at that point, you're just trying to find out who did it.
Yeah. So, that probably brings up a good question of what did you do to relieve stress of the job?
Well, before I was in an on-duty car crash. Before that, I was an avid runner.
Okay.
And I loved running. And if you push yourself hard enough, it took away a lot of the stress. And that's how it was for me, whether it was running or going to the gym, or I really like doing finish work, around my house. And, so those were the things that kind of kept me occupied when I wasn't at work. The running kind of went away after I got hit by a car. My back was messed up at that point, and
you got hit on the job?
Yeah. I was going to a homicide scene, and elderly man ran a red light and hit me in the driver door. So, it's not terrible, but the doctor basically said, you're not going to be able to run anymore.
Yeah.
You'll just exasperate the injury.
Yeah. I always often wonder about that, like when you're, running high-speed pursuit, or when you're flicking on your lights going to a scene or something like that. How often do you get into like a close call with somebody who's not paying attention on the road?
Depends on the time of day. If it's daytime, those close calls happen a lot.
Yeah.
People are up, they're traveling, going to work, coming home from work. I like to work midnight shift in patrol because there was hardly any traffic.
Oh, yeah.
And you did have to worry about drunk drivers, but most of the time, midnight shift, you could get anywhere pretty quick without, running into people. But daytime, man, you had to be careful because look how things happen. People are on their phones, they're texting, things of that nature. They're preoccupied when they shouldn't be. So you can't count on them to be safe. You have to be safe.
Right. Yeah, that's how it is when I'm on the bikes. You can't count on anybody else to see you because nobody's looking. So you got to be double vigilant about everybody else, not just what you're doing.
Yeah. It's just, you got to be a defensive driver. You have to be looking. You always clear the intersection before you're actually in it.
Yeah.
So you're looking at all traffic. Nowadays, I think they have a couple things they are able to do with controlling the traffic lights. So that they're in
remotely.
So that they're in their favor. When I know their fire departments have them where they can make the light green for them. I don't know if that's something they do up here, but I know down there they were experimenting with it.
I've often wondered that because Idaho doesn't have traffic cameras like the red light cameras and stuff like Washington has.
Right.
As far as my understanding is, they're not legal here, so they don't have them. But if you look, like at all the traffic lights, they have some kind of a camera on them. So I don't know if that's just like DOT just watching stuff, or I've heard that one of the many that are up there is actually can recognize emergency vehicles, and then the computer system can either notify some control place or can tell the traffic light system that there's an emergency vehicle there and can change the lights. That's what I heard. I
think they can, and I also think they use them certain times of the day where they change the way the lights function.
Yeah.
So if it's getting backed up really bad on 41 going north, maybe they sync them so traffic moves better.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it as well.
Yeah, I went through. I didn't roll through a stop sign, but I failed to yield once. So I was in a left turn lane, and it was a yellow light, and I was just off in my own world, not thinking, and there was a car coming across, and when the light turned yellow, I just went and kind of cut in front of them, and thankfully, like, I didn't hit anybody, but I was already in front of them, and I said, crap. So I just went. Right behind him was a Post Falls police officer. So pulls me over in front of the potlatch center there, and I ended up super nice guy. He ended up giving me basically a fix-it ticket, so I had to go to traffic school and do the whatever class thing.
Yeah.
And it didn't go on my record. Like, it basically just went away like nothing happened. Like, cool. But I think after class, I was talking to the officer that was doing it, and you know, we were just kind of talking about stuff, and he was saying that he prefers if, like, because everybody's, when the cops are coming, everybody's trying to just like move and get out of the way.
Right.
Because I mean, as far as I remember, that's what you're taught, is you just move over and get out of the way. And what he was saying is, I would prefer, as long as nobody's completely blocking, like if there's 2 lanes of traffic and I can get through, stay where you're at. Because if people are moving all over the place, then I have to try and account for that.
Right.
Whereas if I can just have my lights on and just a clear path and everyone stays where you're at, then it's way easier and way safer. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I would prefer that as well. I think sometimes, you know, if it's multi-lanes, it creates a problem.
Yeah.
Because you have what people are taught is to move to the right for emergency vehicles. Well, if the lane, you know, far right lane moves over, then the middle lane tries to move over, and then the third lane tries to move over. It's a mess.
Yeah, everybody's trying to get over.
Right. I would rather drive on the shoulder if you're aware that I'm there and get around everybody than have everybody try to move.
Yeah, that's kind of what he was saying. Either that or just the outside lane get over.
Right.
And everybody else just stay put.
Right.
Because then, yes, a path is clearing, but he doesn't have people jumping in front of him like, oh, where do I go?
Yeah. And it happens a lot, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, cold cases. Did you ever work on any of those?
I have. I worked on a 1965 case that we resolved. I also worked on a 1984 case for quite a while, but I got promoted, so I didn't get to finish it. But yeah, I liked working the cold cases because we didn't have murders every day. You know, if you had one, then you'd work it to the point where once you have someone in custody, you have follow-up to do, and then the trials usually don't happen right away, so you have downtime. And so we had a room where all the cold cases were, and one day I just went in there and I started looking at them, and I picked up the oldest one, which is Jesse Martinez, was murdered in 1965. And I started working it, and the whole time I was in homicide, I worked on this case till the end of it. But they do take long. You know, when they're really old.
Till the end of the case or until you got out?
Till the end of the case, till I solved it.
Oh, nice.
And it's harder because people are older. You know, finding people was really hard. I even had the FBI help me find Jesse's ex-wife because she had been married at least 6 times since he was murdered. So she had all these different last names.
Yeah.
But they were able to help me find her. And, you know, at the end of the day, we found out it was kind of a, you know, we didn't report this because we tried to save the family some shame. But, you know, we found out, we always thought something was wrong because I would get anonymous phone calls that turned out to be cousins of Jesse's and said, you need to talk to this person or you need to talk to that person. And what we found out was Jesse was much older than most of his cousins. And we were told by the family that Jesse was molesting some of the cousins, and the dads found out and dealt with it their own way. Now, we never able to verbally confirm that with the dads because they had passed away a long time ago. Yeah. But one of the aunts was still alive, and that's who we found and spoke to.
So it's another situation like that 94-year-old lady.
Right. They just decided to handle it themselves. I mean, you know, people are different nowadays than they were back then. That's a huge family secret that they didn't want to get out.
Yeah, it's kind of like old Yeller justice.
Yeah. Yeah. And they handle it. One of the dads was he'd been in the Marine Corps for a really long time. He was probably a World War II vet, and and he wasn't having any of that, and him and his brother-in-law dealt with it.
Jeez.
And because it was kind of, when you looked at the old reports and the scene, they didn't take nothing was taken from him. It wasn't a robbery. He had money in his wallet. Nobody took anything. He had jewelry on. None of his jewelry was missing,
Yeah, that's odd.
Yeah.
The kid just to end up dead in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, in the orange groves, back when they still had him.
Yeah.
He was found in the orange groves.
Huh.
I worked that one pretty much the whole time just because I think it was lengthy, because finding people isn't that easy when it's been that long. I had another one. His name was Robert Webster. He was a Marine that disappeared until one day some farmer found him in his field. And we think we know who did it. We just don't have the evidence.
Yeah.
It's weird because we would get phone calls from this lady who said she knew her husband did it, but we couldn't prove it. And he lives in Vegas now. We did this full-on operation in Vegas to try to figure out if he did it or not, but it never panned out. So that one's still sitting there.
Just weren't able to come up with the right buttons to push.
Right, yeah. And then my partner and I, we worked this other case, Daryl Attardo and Stephanie Anderson. They were murdered in '84 on Halloween. That took us a lot of places, but that's when I got promoted, and I never went back to that case. We have a cold case unit now, so maybe somebody's working it. I don't know. Hopefully they'll call me if they solve it. I'd like to know.
Right? Yeah, that'd be awesome. So you started out in the jail, and then you were a deputy.
In patrol, yeah.
Patrolman. And then you got promoted to...
Investigator.
Okay, homicide investigator?
Well, no.
Or just a general investigator?
In general investigations, I started out working in our backgrounds unit for prospective employees doing their backgrounds, but that didn't last very long. I ended up going to one of our contract cities as a general investigator, and then from there, I went to homicide and worked there.
And so were you in homicide up until you retired then?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I was in homicide. I had probably 20 years on at that point, and I got promoted to sergeant.
Oh, okay.
And when you get promoted in the sheriff's department, and again, this isn't like some places might be different now.
Right, yeah.
But anytime...
State and county laws are probably going to differ.
Yeah. Anytime you get promoted, at least in our department, you end up back in the jail for a little bit. So when you get promoted to sergeant, you become a supervisor in the jail, and then you go back to patrol as a sergeant. And then if you get promoted to lieutenant, there's a bigger variety for lieutenants, so you don't always go to the jail. But I did, and then I ended up, my last assignment as a lieutenant was up at our dispatch center as the department commander.
That's interesting. Like every time you move up, it's almost like you kind of have to go back to basics for a bit.
That's correct. And I think a lot of it is because there's a probationary time every time you get promoted.
Oh, really?
To see if you're cut out for it, because some people are not cut out for supervision. They get promoted and something bad happens, and you start to realize, oh, this is too much for this person. They can't handle it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the only time I've ever heard that any kind of employment does that.
Yeah, it's.
They don't just look at what you've done and say, oh yeah, he'd be good for this, and then give you the promotion and just let you run free.
Right.
They actually hold you to, okay, we're going to see how you do with this first.
That's correct.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it's a good tool to have, because there have been people that couldn't cut it as a sergeant, and they're given the option to go back to their last assignment sometimes. Yeah. But they were definitely, lose their stripes because they don't know how to handle supervision. I always thought it was you have a job to do. I always looked at it as I'm trying to keep my people out of trouble. Yeah. And, I'm not micromanaging them, but I let them know, hey, just do your job and everything will be fine.
Yeah, that's cool. I've often thought that that should be implemented more in, pretty much everything. Yeah. Like where I work at, it would be cool to see a lot of, upper management come down and just take a day to run a machine or learn it, stuff like that. Right. Just to see how things are done. Because it's very different between being on the floor and actually doing a job versus being the person who's telling people what to do. Right. That's what I did when I became a supervisor. The job that I took, when I started doing it, they gave me the job because I'm a computer kind of guy. Like I do know, I'm very analytical. I know how to move pieces around and solve puzzles. And that's kind of mostly what my job is. It's planning. But I took it upon myself when I got the position to go and learn pretty much how to run every machine on the floor that I was in charge of. So I went down there and I said, hey, show me how this is done. How do these work? How do I operate this thing? And I continue to do that all the time, because if I'm going to tell people to do stuff and I'm going to say, well, this is what needs to be done by Wednesday and you need to get it done, well, I need to know what I'm asking that person to do.
Yeah. I it's a good tool, I think, for, looking at it from my career. I think part of it too is almost like the military in a way, where they don't just promote you to sergeant on the spot and you stay there, because now you're supervising people you actually worked with.
Yeah.
So I think moving you to a new location, whether it's the jail or somewhere else, now you can supervise without there being favoritism towards you like this person more than you like this person. They're just new to you, and plus you get to go into a situation where these deputies are waiting to go to patrol, and they love it when people come in that had like an extensive investigative background and patrol background, because they ask you questions all the time.
Yeah.
What if I encounter this? What do I do? A lot of times they would say, hey, you worked homicide for a real long time. What did you like and not like about what deputies did at the scene initially when you arrived? So they would ask you questions. So it really was kind of rewarding in that regard, that you would be able to, give some of the knowledge back to people that are just starting their careers.
Did you get to work with forensics much at all?
All the time.
Yeah.
We have a great crime lab in Orange County. A lot of the DNA stuff that is coming out started in Orange County, especially like the genealogical stuff that's happening now.
Yeah.
Happened there. And that's how they caught the Golden State Killer, was through genealogical DNA.
That's what I heard. It was like the 23andMe or whatever.
Yeah.
So, that's interesting in and of itself. I'm not sure kind of how I feel about that, but it's not a bad thing necessarily, but
I'm sure people aren't signing up in the thought that someone in my family is going to get arrested for murder. I was told, I have never used it because this was after my time that they started doing this, but I was told you can opt out of it or something. Like you can, if you don't want your DNA to be compared by the police or something, you can say no to that. I'm not sure because I've never done it.
Yeah.
My neighbor said she has, and she said there's something a box you can check if you don't want it shared.
Oh yeah. So it's not allowed to be used.
That's correct.
For forensics. Yeah.
There's ways around that though. If you have a solid case, you can write a search warrant for it. If a judge approves, then they have to give it to you. And generally, if it's a murder, they're going to probably lean on that side and say, right, okay, well, this is important that we either eliminate this person or not.
So with the Golden State Killer, I don't imagine that he jumped on 23andMe to find out his lineage. So how exactly did they use that?
I think it was the brother.
Oh, his brother?
Yeah.
And so they matched his brother to something that they had found at the scene?
Yes, because DNA, even though back then there was no DNA, samples were still collected in the hopes that at some point technology would be there to use it.
Yeah. And
I think that's how that all ended up working for them.
Yeah, they still collected hair and blood and all that stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah, just keep it on file.
Yeah. When I was surprised that when I went to our frozen section of our evidence room, when I started working these cold cases, the stuff that they would collect kind of surprised me because I'd never seen it done before.
Is it like a cryo room or something?
Yeah.
That's cool.
So like perishable evidence like blood and samples, and in this one thing there was fingers.
Fingers?
In jars.
Wow.
Of one of my victims. And I think maybe they thought down the road maybe we'll get something from this.
I can see that, yeah. Keep everything, right?
Yeah. Just in case.
So forensics teams are just kind of like weird hoarders.
Kind of, yeah. Smart people, and I got a lot of respect for the stuff they do, because they are definitely worthwhile having. If you're a big department, having your own crime lab is nice.
Yeah. So as much as how do you think crime and/or policing has changed since you started? I
think that it's changed technologically a lot. I believe nowadays the police and the deputies have more technology at their disposal in terms of what's in their vehicles, what kind of things they're carrying. We never had the body cams In fact, patrol cars were just getting the patrol video systems, and that was still back when it was VHS tapes.
Yeah, the dash cams and all that.
Yeah.
The VHS tapes, for real?
Yeah. When I was in patrol, we were still using VHS tapes, and the system was never that good.
Yeah.
They were always breaking down back then, and I think now that they have digital video and it's all stored on a memory card, that's beneficial.
Yeah.
I think the body cams are beneficial because, in a way, I think when you're interviewing people, if you're not recording it, it loses a little bit, in the report. Maybe something important doesn't make it there, but if you can review what you were talking to them about, I think it helps with the report writing.
Yeah.
I bet things are more accurate now when it comes to reports that are being written. And not to say that they weren't accurate, I'm saying that maybe they were missing something in the conversation that might have been important.
Yeah, well, like you said, in the cold cases, people move around and so much time has passed, people get older, people forget things. And I mean, it doesn't take long for that to happen. So, right. I mean, even just between, when you may have interviewed somebody here or on scene, and then, you're trying to get everything. I imagine you're trying to write as much down at the time as you can.
Right.
But you're not going to do the whole thing right there. So you get back to the station and, if it's not right away, it could be hard to remember everything.
Right. And on a busy day, you could go to 10 different calls or more.
Right.
And you've talked to minimum 10 different people.
Yeah.
So, and then when you finally do get a chance to write the report, again, human beings, something might slip your mind. So I think having those body cams are very helpful in that regard. I do think that policing has become way more difficult. It's always been a political football that gets kicked around. You can't do this, you can do that, and there's always case law being made, and you have to try to decipher that kind of information because it's
right.
coming from a political view. So you're always worried about thinking am I doing this wrong? I want to do it right, but I'm not sure what the new law is because they're always changing them. I hate the defund the police movement. I don't think that's I don't think you're accomplishing anything by doing that.
Yeah, I don't think it is either. I think one of the things that they're looking at with that is they don't want police to have like drones, and they don't want police to have crazy weaponry and all this stuff. When you're looking in terms of a SWAT team or something, I mean, they need the stuff that they have.
Right.
Because, I mean, especially the SWAT guys, if you're busting in doors and you're going in trying to catch criminals who, again, as we've already discussed, don't give a shit about the law. They may have ARs. They may have, God knows what.
Right. So,
yes, you need to have the power that you need to have to make sure that you can deal with whatever the situation is going to bring.
Right.
But, if you're defunding the police department, like, again, as we talked about before, you're taking away training, you're taking away equipment that they may need to do the job and not only keep themselves safe, but to keep you safe and everybody else in the vicinity.
Right. And I think a lot of people, get upset because, they sometimes see officers with automatic weapons like an AR-15 or something of that sort. But, right. That came into play after Columbine. Those were given to agencies after the Columbine shooting so that they could address the active shooter issue. That's the first time that was ever discussed.
That was?
Yeah, as far as giving them the AR-15s in their cars and equipping them with them. And we had all kinds of new training as a result of Columbine.
I would have thought that it would have been after the Hollywood shootout.
Yeah, we still didn't get anything. We didn't get equipped until Columbine happened. Now, maybe some of the other agencies did. Maybe LAPD did, knowing that they had just gone through this and didn't have that kind of firepower. But ours wasn't until after that. We were kind of on the slow end of getting new stuff. We were still carrying revolvers when I went through the academy.
Jeez.
And the sheriff finally gave in and spent some money and bought a lot of semi-autos.
Yeah, it's interesting because it seems like a lot of people don't think about that in terms of, criminals don't care about the law. That's why they're criminals.
Right.
They're going to get the tool that they need to do the job. Like, look at the Hollywood shootout.
Right.
It's several guys that had automatic weapons, and they had riot gear, they had vests, they had tactical equipment. They were geared up to do what they did.
Right.
And they didn't give a damn. How many officers got got wounded or killed that day because those guys decided to do what they did. I don't even remember it was a robbery or something, right?
Yeah, it was a robbery of a bank, and they had all kinds of heavy Kevlar on.
Yeah.
And they were taking shots, but they weren't going down. And they did lay down some heavy gunfire on top of it all.
Yeah, I mean, as police officers, you're essentially trying to take out Terminators.
Right. And the vests have gotten better over the years. What took us a while, we did have vests, but then they finally went to vests that actually had a trauma plate in it. But the rest of your body doesn't have a whole lot of protection.
Yeah.
So a well-placed round in the knee, that takes you out too.
Yeah.
You're no longer effective at that point.
Yeah, a vest, in fact, is just a vest.
Yes. Yeah. So, people don't like some of the tools they have, but as you said, sometimes they're necessary to do your job.
Yeah.
I would, as a citizen, if I had kids in school, I would want a quick response if something was happening there.
Yeah.
And you can't wait for SWAT. That's what they learned about Columbine. Don't wait for SWAT. Go in.
Yeah. Well, in that Uvalde, Texas shooting, I mean, that was a whole thing in and of itself as well. That was crazy.
Yeah, that was as a profession, I was a little bit embarrassed by that situation.
I think a lot of officers were. I would imagine that whole debacle, it just seemed extremely embarrassing, not only for that department, but for officers probably around the country. Yeah,
it just based on my training, you don't wait. You go in and you handle business.
Yeah, we
had this training that. The first deputies on scene, go in. Don't wait for SWAT. Don't wait for more people. Just go in and find the person. And I was a little disappointed by that. That shouldn't have been that way.
What do you think? What do you think happened there?
Well, they said that the person on scene that was in charge told them to kind of stand down a little bit, like don't rush in there. But you can't. That's not a legal order. You wouldn't be in trouble for not listening to that person.
Right.
There's certain orders you have to follow, but that's not one of them. And one of those officers should have done something. And, now they have a little bit of excuse and saying, well, we were told not to. Well, so what? You go in.
Yeah, and that's what I heard left and right from a lot of people is like, who cares? What's going to happen? You might lose your job. Well, how many kids died because you didn't want to lose your job?
Yeah, and it puts us in people, I know there's a lot of support out there for police. They're not very vocal about it. I wish they were more. I believe the majority are supportive of the police, but we always hear the anti-police crowd is the loudest all the time.
Yeah.
And something like that where you don't take action when you should, it only strengthens their voice.
Yep.
These anti-police people.
Right.
Why are we paying you? See, we should defund the police because they don't do anything when they're needed anyway.
Right.
And that's their mentality, and that's how they put it out there.
Yeah.
And so they didn't do us as a profession any good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a tough spot to be in. I've never been in any kind of situation like that. So, I can't say one thing about it or the other, but I can imagine when you're in it and you're the guy that does have to go in there and you know that it's the right thing to do. Like, it can't be easy. It can't be easy to just disregard everything that your human survival is telling you not to do and just go in.
Right.
But...
and I don't know what kind of equipment they had. I don't know if this, could have been something like of that nature where they didn't have the right stuff or didn't feel they had the right stuff. I haven't, there was an after action report out that I haven't finished yet. So I kind of, now that you've brought it up, I feel like I want to finish it now to see what people said, when they were interviewed.
Right. Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yeah. And I don't know, maybe they weren't equipped properly or they didn't think they were, but, you're still in a situation like that. Yeah, you want to stay alive.
Right.
But are you going to just stand there and listen to gunfire knowing that little kids are being shot and killed?
Yeah.
I don't think I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I just stood there.
Yeah. Again, I've never been in that situation, but I feel like if I had been there in that situation, I probably would have felt the same way. If I had a gun of any kind on me, I probably would have ran in there.
Right. And they were doing more to contain the crowd than they were with the actual shooter. Like, people were mad. Their kids were in there. They wanted to go in and save their child. Whether they died or not, they were willing. And it just seemed...
A lot of mama bears outside.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And certainly didn't, in my opinion, live up to the way we were supposed to handle things.
I heard... and I didn't see anything about it, so I mean it could be horseshit, but that it was like the first person or something that was gonna go in there was a civilian that went and grabbed his rifle or something, was going to run in there. I didn't see a whole lot about it, but
I think one of them was he was an off-duty police officer, and his wife called him, and that might have been the
maybe
person.
That was it.
Yeah, I would have. I would have done something.
Yeah.
Yeah, sad situation for those families to see all those police there and nothing being done.
Yeah.
Very frustrating for them, I'm sure.
Oh, here's a good one. Let's see. How do we word this? From your viewpoint, how do you see what has been coming through? I mean, not even just recently, but I guess since maybe the dawn of policing, racial inequality in the justice system.
Well, this is my opinion, but I believe that this claim that there is systemic racism in law enforcement,
those are the words I was looking for,
is a farce. I worked with a lot of people. I never heard anybody in patrol say, hey, let's go mess with the black community today. Let's go mess with the Hispanic community today. I never heard anything like that in 28 years from anybody. So this claim that they're unfairly treated, maybe in some cases that happens in places, I don't know. But I didn't experience that in all those years. Could there have been people that were racist? Maybe. It didn't come out.
Yeah.
Maybe privately at the home they were, but not on the job that I ever witnessed.
Right.
And so I think that it's just a way to fuel the whole defund the police movement, is to create this controversy that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And I guess it could in some places. I don't know. I haven't been all over the country. I don't know what the police are like in Chicago or Alabama or North Dakota. I don't know what they do up there. And there could be some valid claims by the public. Do I think it's nationwide a problem? I don't.
I think I had a similar conversation with somebody before. And I think what came about was, like we were discussing before about in the situation, and during a traffic stop or whatever it is, everybody's amped up. You're nervous because you're getting pulled over, right? And that officer is nervous because they don't know what's going to happen. Maybe it is a routine traffic stop, and everybody's cordial and civil. You give them a ticket, or you don't. You just give them a warning. In my experience, a lot of officers that I have talked to that are either my friends or just people that in passing, like you said, most of the time it's about education. And it's about, you rolled through that stop sign. It's unsafe. You could have hit somebody could have hit you. So just in the future, be mindful, come to a stop, yada, yada. They're not looking to hand out tickets.
Right.
Except for maybe in areas where, with quotas.
Yeah.
Which personally I think is stupid. I don't understand quotas. Why are we forcing officers to just divvy out a certain amount of tickets all the time? I think that's stupid.
Right.
And that's only a money grab in my opinion.
Unfortunately, we didn't have one. You gave out as many or as little as you wanted that day.
Yeah.
Personally, for me, a lot of the times around Christmas, I wouldn't give out any. Just because I didn't want to ruin people's week of Christmas or something. And nobody ever gave me a hard time for writing 1 or 2 or 20.
Yeah.
I never even heard anything about it. So fortunately, our department wasn't like that. And I guess there could be some, who knows, as a condition of your assignment to traffic, they might say, well, if you don't, we might have to find someone else who will do the job. And it's kind of a veiled threat that if you don't do it our way, we'll find someone who will.
Yeah.
But I don't believe in that either. I mean, it takes a lot of the discretion out of the officer's hands to say, just give someone a warning.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, a lot of times because people are they're just trying to get to work, or whatever. Your day to day gets in front of you and you're just moving and grooving, and it's just honest mistakes. Right. So I would think that being stopped and just having to deal with being stopped, and then an officer just being cool and like, hey, this is what you did wrong. Like, I'm not going to give you a ticket, but you need to just check yourself. Yeah. I mean, to me, that would be enough. It's been enough. I've had that happen. Right. And, again, he's a really cool dude. I ended up, shook his hand before he got back in his car and we took off, and no big deal. And after that, I didn't do it again. So when you're talking about all this stuff, whether you're white or you're black or Hispanic, whatever, going back to just giving officers, some modicum of decency and respect, and just remembering that if you're getting pulled over more often than not, I'm not going to say all the time, but 99 times out of 100, there's a reason.
Right.
It's not like you guys are just bored and looking for shit to do. So just be cool. Don't be edgy. Don't yell and scream at them. Don't get in their face. Don't, if you start getting agitated, then you're going to agitate them.
Right.
And whether you like it or not, you're going to start going into that kind of fight or flight is going to start taking over. And so then you have to use whatever you can use to stay calm and try to take that back down. And in my opinion, it's so much easier to just avoid that whole situation by just staying cool yourself.
Yeah, there's no reason to make it agitate people. I mean, it's like you said, that there's a job to do.
Yeah.
And traffic is one of those assignments the police get.
Right.
And part of that is pulling people over. And the thing I used to really hate was I would pull someone over and they would say, you pulled me over because I'm black, or you pulled me over because I'm Hispanic. And the reality of it is, if I was working, say, speed enforcement, and you're using what they call LiDAR, it's a laser.
Yeah.
You can pick somebody's front end up from 1,000 feet away. And at that point, you can't even tell if the person or thing behind the wheel is even human. You can't see color. You just see the car coming at this point. Plus, you have the glare off the windshield and things like that. And so you don't even know until you actually get them pulled over to the side of the road generally.
Right.
And so to say something like that it's a non-starter, man. It's just like, are you really going to go there today? Because you don't need to, because that's not how it works.
Yeah, it's not necessary.
Yeah.
I mean, like, when you're watching Cops or something, the show, how often do you see people of every color get pulled over and then instantly they just start shit?
Yeah.
They just get out of the car unprovoked just because they're getting pulled over, and then they start throwing punches or they start yelling and screaming and getting irate. Like, that is what gets you either taken down to the ground and cuffed and or possibly shot.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't help the situation. I mean, like you said, people are already a little bit on edge.
Yeah.
I mean, car stops are one of the most dangerous things police do.
Yeah.
Because it's a total unknown when you're pulling somebody over. It's not like a call you get where, hey, Target has some guy in custody for petty theft. Can you go over there and take custody of him? You kind of know what you're getting into there. Does it mean everything's going to go great? No. But car stops are the most unknown thing you can do as a police officer. You don't know what you're getting into.
Yeah, there's so many variables.
So they're on edge a little bit. The person getting pulled over is on edge, probably. Nobody likes it.
Yeah.
I got pulled over for the first time in Spokane, going a little too fast through that section where it's only 60, in the middle of the city.
Yeah, on the freeway.
Going to the airport. I got pulled over. It's going too fast. And even I was kind of like, a little edgy because, I don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't want, you definitely, from my point of view, I don't want a jumpy person pulling me over.
Right.
That's what gets me a little worked up. When I tell them, I'm like you, I keep my hands in view. I always tell them if I'm armed.
Yeah.
And they say, well, where is it? And I won't even reach for it. I'll just say it's, behind my waistband and, next to my right side. And they'll usually, in this case, the guy was really nice. He goes, okay, well, and I wouldn't do it this way, but it's his deal. He said, well, take it out and hand it to me. I would have asked him if I could take it off of him.
Right, yeah.
But it didn't work out that way, and everything was fine. But even that, you just don't want someone to be kind of jumpy with you. You don't want there to be like some miscommunication or something and have something go really wrong.
Right.
That shouldn't.
Right. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And even as an ex-officer, that you felt that way too, being pulled over.
Yeah. And, maybe for different reasons than the general public who's worried about getting a ticket or, whatever they may be thinking about at the time. For me, it's more of a, I just hope nothing goes wrong here kind of situation, because unfortunately there are people who are in this profession that, they're always in like this elevated mode. Like they don't ever come down from this overreacting kind of mode. And I've seen that in some cases as a department commander when I'm listening to the calls that are going out in the county, the way they're handling them. It's like everybody's a mini SWAT team now. And it's like, this is totally unnecessary. Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Not every call is a SWAT call out. And some people think that way.
They're dialed in on level 10
right.
the second they clock in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not necessary. And I'm not saying, do I want them to be safe when they're out there? For sure. But I do think there are times when there's a little bit of overkill for certain things.
Yeah.
I was listening to one call, generally when there's a burglary in progress, more than one deputy will go to this because you don't know, is the burglar armed? Are they not armed? You don't know. Sometimes it's just an open door and the alarm went off. Like they didn't shut it all the way when they left. That's mostly what it is. Faulty alarm systems, or they didn't do something right before they left the house and it ended up setting the alarm off, or the pet sets the alarm off because they didn't cage the pet and, the motion sensors picking them up around the house. So a lot of times it's like that. And, I hate to use the old days, but there were times where we just would go in and clear the house with 2 guys. And now it's like they got people on every corner, like they got a hostage situation or something. And,
yeah.
And again, I want them to feel safe and go home to their families. But I feel like we've trained people to be in this DEFCON 5 level all the time. And it's not necessary for every call.
Yeah, assess the situation, what actually is needed.
Yeah.
Right from the start.
Yeah, and as the department commander, you listen to all the calls in the county that are going on, all the contract cities, the unincorporated areas, so you hear a whole bunch of different things. And, sometimes you have to call the field sergeant and say, you need to have a talk with this person. They're not doing anything really wrong, but in one case, a lady wanted to report theft of her mail from her mailbox. So we sent a deputy over, and he gets on the radio, and he said, can you, a lot of times if it's a really bad call, you'll have them step out so they're not in the house anymore, and you can see that they're unarmed.
Right.
So he goes and he gets on the radio and he says, hey, can you make the informant step out of the house? And it's like, this is a report call, man. It's a report call. Just go knock on the door and be friendly.
Yeah.
And take the report.
Just put on a smile and pull out your notepad.
But so sometimes I think that encounters like that with the police do set people on this path of not liking the police.
Yeah.
Maybe the occasional overzealousness on the part of some. For the most part, everybody does a really good job out there, in my opinion, but there are some people that you occasionally need to reel in.
Right.
And that's the job of the supervisor, and that's how it should be.
Yeah. Well, and this whole idea of, it seems like anymore, people are not perfect.
Right.
Right. So it seems like anymore people want to crucify entire groups just for the actions of a few bad apples, which unfortunately, that's how society works, right?
Right.
It only takes one asshole to ruin the fun time for everybody.
Correct. Yeah.
But you can't do that. Just because of a few bad cops doesn't make them all bad. Just because of, a few black guys who kill somebody or whatever doesn't make all black people bad. Just because a few white guys who do some bad shit doesn't make all white people bad. Doesn't make all white people or all black people racist.
Right.
Everybody stop trying to crucify entire groups for the actions of a few.
Right.
Because every group, no matter what race you are, no matter where you're from, no matter what profession you're in, there's always going to be a few bad ones. That's just the nature of people, because nobody's perfect.
Right.
In fact, as far as I've seen, people these days in general are kind of shitty.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Yeah. We need to rein that in.
Yeah. And I think people get in this mode, and it could be in some cases, when they file a complaint against the police and they think, well, no, this isn't going to go anywhere. Nobody's going to do anything about it. Well, I worked internal affairs, and I can at least assure the people of Orange County that we took every complaint seriously, and it was well tracked. They never got lost. The cases never got buried. They were on a track, and you had to show progress or they are exonerated. It never occurred, because people do lie and accuse police of doing things they didn't do. It happens a lot. But there are cases where they get accused, and rightfully so, and they have to be looked into.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, on some of the public behalf, me personally, I didn't want somebody wearing my uniform that shouldn't be.
Right.
And that's how I looked at it. And if they needed to be fired, they should be fired.
Yeah.
I think our department does a pretty good job of it. Nobody's perfect. Some things do slip through the cracks in terms of how the person handles the investigation, possibly. Maybe they just don't know any better. Because we used to, when you got promoted as a new investigator, most of the time you ended up in backgrounds or internal affairs. And to be honest with you, internal affairs is no different than any other big investigation. This is a problem. And so when I got promoted to sergeant, I only ended up staying in the jail for maybe a couple months because they decided they were going to remove the investigators from internal affairs, and they were going to bring experienced investigators that are now sergeants in. And I think that's one of the best moves they ever made, because now you have experienced people looking into these cases, and they generally not going to miss the small stuff.
Right.
Whereas when you're new and you haven't investigated a case anymore, you do investigations as a patrol deputy, but nothing like on this scale, whether it's homicide or internal affairs. You're talking about someone's job, and if they're dirty, you want to get rid of them.
So working internal affairs, did you run into any like really bad cases where like, yeah, this dude's totally a piece of shit, like we need to get him out of here?
A couple, yeah. A couple cases, some of it involving theft of like county property and things like that, and then selling it on eBay or Craigslist. And that's an integrity issue for sure. You can't be a cop and be a thief.
Yeah.
We've had people that get addicted to painkillers because maybe it started out innocently enough where they got injured on the job, especially like back issues, and they give them, like oxycodone and things like that for the pain. Ugh. And then when they don't get it anymore, we've had people get caught, they'll be going to someone's house for a call, and they got caught rummaging through their medicine cabinet looking for more.
Jesus.
And that person was let go. And there have been others that, the one that kills me though, this female deputy was having sex with a guy in the jail all the time.
Jeez.
And it killed me because...
Like an inmate?
Yeah. So she was a black female, and the inmate was white guy, and he was a complete white supremacist, and it just boggled my mind that this even happened.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the questions we asked her in the beginning of the interrogation, and she said something like, "So what's the big deal?" And I said, "Are you kidding me? It's a felony."
Yeah.
To have any kind of relationship like that with an inmate in your custody. She said, "What's the big deal?" And I looked at my partner, and we just kind of were like, "Oh my gosh!" But she was fired almost instantly.
Yeah.
They put her on leave long enough for us to get the paperwork done, and that was about it. And she was done.
Oh, what about the female cop in Tennessee?
Oh yeah,
that one that just came up.
Yeah,
that's a dirty mess.
Yeah, that whole thing's a mess. But yeah, I think for the most part, the good police don't want them here in their department.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to work with somebody like that.
Did you ever, working internal affairs, did you ever have any issues with like backlash from people on the force?
Yeah, we'd get that.
You see, you see it like on TV and stuff that, internal affairs people are basically just looked at as, snitches. And
yeah. There are people, usually they're younger, they're working in the jail. They don't understand the inner workings of the department. I think pretty much mostly everybody understands that internal affairs is a necessary position in a department. You can't leave things unchecked that are hurting the image of the department in the eyes of the public. You can't let that happen.
Yeah.
As soon as people start thinking that way overall, that's going to be the end for your department. You have to have checks and balances. And I think veterans, people who've been around, understand that. They don't ever want to be subject to it, of course, but occasionally they are. Whenever someone makes a complaint, it has to be looked into. And I can say that with regularity that most of them were exonerated. There wasn't this widespread misconduct going on.
Not in Orange County, at least.
No, could be other places, maybe.
Right? Yeah.
But we didn't have a huge problem. The people that shouldn't be there weren't there very long, and they shouldn't have been. They just slipped through the cracks. And I think right now that's one of the biggest problems in law enforcement is they're having to lower their standards because they can't fill a position. And
right.
All you have to do is watch the news. Who wants to work in law enforcement at this current place we're in and lack of support? And one of the things I like about here, I think that police enjoy more support than say they do in other places. And it's vocal, and I like that. They should.
Yeah.
And if they do something wrong, hold them accountable. But if you feel like supporting the police, then be vocal about it.
Yeah, for sure. So why did you retire? Is it just your time was up? You'd done it long enough, or if you don't mind me asking?
No, not at all. I was looking to do something else. Believe it or not, when everybody's all happy to make lieutenant, when you finally get a promotion like that, because it doesn't come along very often. But one of the things that happens is you're almost kind of done with law enforcement at that point. You're in a management position now. And you're managing groups of people, and like when I first started out at the jail, I was the watch commander there, and there were sergeants there, and so they handled everything unless they really needed me for something. So it was kind of boring. I was used to high-end investigations, homicide, running from here to there, doing this, doing that, to I got to the point where I'm just sitting at my desk now, and what do I do? Going up to dispatch was more fun. There was more activity. I could hear all the calls going on. There were things I had to intervene in, such as pursuits, whether to call them off or not.
Yeah.
So I was more engaged, but still, I was just sitting at a desk, and I wasn't doing the things that I liked doing. So I finally decided, I'm going to go do something different. And I decided to retire, and I opened up a bike repair shop up at our cabin up in the mountains.
Motorcycles?
No.
Bicycles?
Bicycles. And most of the time, I would get donated bikes, and then I would fix them up and just give them to people who couldn't afford bikes for their kids or something,
Nice.
So I did that for a while, but then that's when we decided to move permanently up here. So now I haven't really been doing anything much. I'm learning how to weld.
Awesome.
And I really would like to maybe start my own mobile welding business or something.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
My neighbor's a master welder, and he's been teaching me a whole lot about welding.
Perfect.
I'm not really getting those beads down really nice yet.
Yeah. There's tricks to it. I mean, for a long time, I used to do auto body repair.
Yeah.
So for the longest time, I was welding every day. I got really good at replacing GM and Dodge box sides.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the shop that I worked at before Dave Smith built their own, they used to subcontract out all of their lot damaged vehicles to different shops around in the area, and we actually were one of their number one, us and another shop. So we got a lot of their stuff, and man, there's so many people that just hate Dave Smith, and I don't want to say that I hate them too, but I do feel that they've ruined the Silver Valley in a way, because it's kind of like they just buy every piece of property they can find and bulldoze it and park cars on it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that's gone now that was there, when I grew up, and maybe that's what it is. They destroyed my nostalgia.
Right.
I don't really know, but they had a guy once that was up on the hillside with a hunting rifle, and just shooting randomly at cars in their parking lot. So we got several in that had bullet holes in them that we had to repair, and all kinds of stuff.
Wow.
And a lot of times their customers that got in wrecks or something, they would refer them to us or to the other shop. So yeah, I had a lot of damaged truck sides that I repaired. I got pretty good at that. So like I was ICAR certified for welding for a while. So in the auto body world, that's kind of a big thing.
Yeah.
If you get certified for MIG, GMA welding and stuff, and then you get your ICAR certification, you can pretty much go anywhere and get a job if you have all of your tickets. So
yeah, that's something that's kind of missing, don't you think? The trades.
Oh yeah.
We really when I was in school, we had, once you got to your junior year, you could opt out of 3 of your classes, and you went to a trade school for those 3 hours.
Yep.
And, it just seems like that's not happening anymore. Really, some of these jobs pay pretty darn good if you go through the process. And I wish people would push that more.
Well, have you heard of K-Tech?
I have.
Yeah. So here up in it's in Rathdrum, I believe.
Yeah, I've seen that place.
Yep. Yeah. So K-Tech, it's kind of like an outreach school, and it's high school, and I think some college programs, because it's run by NIC, I think some college programs can refer people over there. So, so my company and several others actually had their hands in creating K-Tech. We actually donate a lot of steel to them for their welding department.
Oh, great.
So a lot of our scrap stuff that we're just going to throw away anyway, we palletize it and weigh it, and, we donate it. So, I mean, we get to write it off at the end of the year, but it goes to them and they use it in their welding classes. So
that's great.
I actually just got my first tour of K-Tech this last year. I got to go stand around and talk to a bunch of different classes of kids and, try to recruit new people to come work for us. That was a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah.
But that school is amazing. And I ended up telling these kids that I was standing in front of, like, if I'm not going to say that I have any regrets or that I, would change anything, but if they had something like this when I was your age, my life, I guarantee right now would be a lot different.
Yeah.
Because that's what they're teaching. They're teaching the trades, and it's not all just building stuff, working with your hands, hot, heavy, welding, all that stuff. They have a computer lab there that's phenomenal, and they're teaching cybersecurity. They're teaching how to build machines. They're teaching servers. They're teaching all kinds of stuff as far as technology goes.
That's great.
They have nursing classes. They have the welding. They have construction. So they actually have a out back. They have this little construction area that they've set up where I don't know if they rent equipment or what they do, but they actually teach kids how to build roads and how to do level, the area and how to do surveying and all that stuff, like the whole 9 yards. They teach you how to do it. So trades up here anyway in North Idaho, I mean, this is something that we've recognized really needs to be taken care of, and we need to be teaching people how to do this stuff.
Right.
It's going back to what we said before. If nobody knows how to do it, if nobody knows how to fix the roads because everyone's been taught that you have to have a college degree in psychology or information technology, well, what about all of our roads? What about all of our infrastructure? What about all of our doctors, our medical system? If we don't have anybody going and learning this stuff, how is it ever going to be maintained? How is it ever going to be rebuilt? How are we going to build new stuff?
Right.
Trades are important. And what people don't realize is that you don't have to have a college degree for everything. Trades, especially a lot of trades nowadays, because so many people aren't doing it, trades are hurting for employees, actually pay really well.
Yeah. I'm a firm believer that you're right. College isn't necessary for every job. There's a couple disappointing years in my department when they were only hiring people that had a degree, and it kind of backfired after a while because, it didn't even matter what your degree was in. Now, I could see if you had a criminal justice degree or you had, management in criminal justice or something, then yeah. But as a supervisor, I can tell you that I read reports from a lot of people that had degrees and they were terrible.
Yeah.
They were terrible at writing. And I'm thinking, this can't be the future. We're not going to put public safety based on a degree.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't work that way. It's a whole nother animal. As far as what you're doing, having a degree, not a degree, doesn't make you a better cop.
Right.
Can you talk to the public? Can you write a report? That's a lot of what we do.
Yeah.
Your business degree doesn't really come into play that often.
Yeah. When I'm looking at people to hire, like a college degree shows me that you were able to stick with something and to, hold to your convictions of, I'm going to go through this thing. I'm going to get it done. I'm going to do, I'm going to go through the whole learning process and retain enough to pass all the tests. And that's good. But a degree doesn't make you intelligent.
Right.
It doesn't make you smart. It just shows that you can do something consistently, in my opinion.
Right.
I've hired plenty of people that barely have a GED over someone with a degree because this person that had a GED had experience. They knew what they were doing. And in the interview, when I talked to them, I could tell that they weren't bullshitting me when I said, yeah, I need somebody who can do this and this and this, and I need somebody who can be organized and who can put information together and be able to do this job. And they were like, yeah. And the way that they talked, they understood. They knew exactly what I was talking about versus the guy with a degree that kind of whatever it was would sort of translate into the job. Like they had no idea what the hell I was talking about.
Right.
And just listening to them, you could tell they're scatterbrained. They were genuinely, good, smart people, but they didn't have it in them, I could tell, to be able to stay organized and take all the things that I need done every day and be able to manage their time properly and just get the job done.
Yeah. Yeah. You always hope you get the best person for the job. That's how I looked at things. Is I don't care about your degree. I don't care about this or that. I want the best person working for me.
Right.
That helps, in my case, our department. If you're good at what you do, then I'm happy with you. You don't have to impress me any further with whatever you did in school or whatever that might be.
Yeah.
I just, there were deputies I liked, and then there were some that I just thought were lazy, and I didn't like lazy lazy bugged me, and I'm sure it does most people who supervise.
Yeah.
Having an employee who's lazy I used to say I spend 90% of my time on 10% of the staff, because that's how it was. It was always the same people. The good people just kept their head down and went to work every day, and they solved cases and they wrote good reports, and it was always this small group of people that were always drawing my attention.
Right.
For violations of policy or things like that.
Yeah, I don't spend enough time on the floor these days dealing with or just being present with people, because I'm usually doing a lot of administrative type of stuff, but I try to make as much time as possible. And that's usually what I tell people, after they've been there a while, is that, hey, I'm sorry that I don't talk to you as much as I probably should, but think of it this way: if I'm not in your ear every day, you're doing something right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That usually sets them at ease, and they're like, okay, keep doing what you're doing. You're good.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same way. If I'm not bugging you, it's probably because you're doing a great job. And at the end of the day, everybody gets a yearly eval. So
yeah, exactly.
That's how they know.
Yeah.
If they don't already know, they're going to know how good they're doing when they get their eval from me.
Yeah.
And people were happy if they did their hard work. They were happy with their eval.
Right.
There were people that weren't happy.
Yeah. Well, and the people that work for me, it's specialized labor. So each person has their job and they do what they do. Mm-hmm. Whereas, the other departments, they move people around every day to different jobs, just so that they don't get bored, stuff like that. You may have a team building this tank today, and then tomorrow you move one or a couple of them over to, a different truck. That's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
And they do that to kind of keep people from, getting the monotony bug, which is awesome. But my guys, I have a table operator. That's what he does. I have brake operators. That's what they do. So I can't move them around. I do try to cross train everybody so that they can cover for each other.
Yeah.
And I'm trying someday to get to a point where they're all they know enough about each other's job to where I can do that and move them around. I think that would be cool. But
yeah. I think that's probably why law enforcement was such a big draw for me. Every day was different.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing the same thing every day. I think I would have been bored with that. And, going back to why I retired, I think that's kind of what pushed me in that direction is I was basically doing the same thing every day. I wasn't out in the field. I couldn't go out in the field. You get hit by a car and you do this and you have to wrestle with drunks. And eventually when you get into your 50s, that stuff starts playing a toll on your body. I've had to have a couple surgeries since I retired because of things that were broken in the past and repaired wrong or something like that. And that would probably played into it too, is I knew I would never be able to go out to the field anymore. And so that kind of made my mind up. But just I liked the variety, and there was no variety after that. And I think that's what pushed me in that direction.
Yeah, you can't keep doing it forever, but you don't want to be a pencil pusher either.
Right. Yeah, most of my career was doing stuff every day. Even as a sergeant, you're a supervisor, but you go out. I went right back to the same unit that I was in when I first got promoted to investigator, but now I was the sergeant in charge of the whole investigative unit. So even though most of my job was, administrative, as a sergeant, you still go out to the field with these, with the deputy or the investigators for serving search warrants and things like that. Or you can just go with them on a case. You don't have to sit in your office all the time.
Right.
So even at that level, I was still doing things. It wasn't until you get to the management level where it just seems like you're not doing anything anymore.
Yeah.
And that's hard to accept after years and years of doing things.
Yeah. I can totally see, getting bored out of your skull, ugh. Yeah. And then you don't even want to get up and go into the office anymore.
And that plays a part in it. When you're not liking what you do anymore, it becomes a problem, and you don't look forward to it. If you don't look forward to it, then it's no fun anymore.
Yeah. Let's see. So under my general stupid stuff, I am kind of interested in what you would think. So shows like Law and Order. You ever watch that at all?
I used to watch it in the past.
So is it how true to life do they kind of stick on those?
I think like Law and Order was pretty good. I mean, you have to kind of think that, this stuff doesn't happen in an hour. I don't care what the crime is.
Right, yeah.
It doesn't start and end in an hour.
Well, the episodes are supposedly based on true events and stuff. Yeah. I just picture real cops. If they're watching this, they're sitting there and then just like every 5 minutes pointing at the screen like, bullshit.
Yeah, my wife doesn't like watching like crime stories with me because I'll always have some comment going on about it. I think Law and Order, as far as like the courtroom part of it, is pretty accurate. It's condensed and you don't always see everything, but as far as like the investigators going out, a lot of times in that shows them roughing people up because they're not telling them the truth. Well, that's not really how that works. We don't rough people up. Now if they want to fight us, then we have to do what we have to do. But
right.
We're not there to rough people up to get info out of them.
Yeah.
And I do see that occasionally on those shows, and I sit there and go, this is not the reality.
Good cop, bad cop, and bad cop goes a little far.
When I first got promoted to investigator, you go to a class, and have you ever seen that movie, My Cousin Vinny?
I want to say I've seen it at least once.
With Marissa Tomei and, why can't I think of his name right now?
Yeah.
He was in Goodfellas.
He was in Casino. Joe Pesci.
Yeah, Joe Pesci. It was in that movie. And they showed us that movie because the courtroom part of it was pretty spot on.
Really?
Yeah. As far as the procedural parts and all that,
yeah,
it was pretty spot on. So we watched part of that movie during this training week that we were on, and I thought that was kind of funny. And ever since then, I thought when people ask me about a movie that I've thought was pretty accurate, that's one of them. It's a comedy, but it was pretty close.
That's awesome. I'm gonna have to watch that again now. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, we're about there. We're about out of time. So, okay. One last thing. Do you have any books that you're reading or podcasts, stuff that you might recommend?
The only books I'm reading, there's one called The Warrior Mindset. I've been reading. I just started it. It's a good book. Most of the time I read fiction. Kind of takes me away from the garbage news that's on every day,
Yeah, right.
Turn the TV off and read a book. But there is a book out there that I haven't read it recently, but my friend Erin wrote it. Her son was murdered, and I was the lead investigator. And we've been friends since it happened in 2007. But she wrote a book that I thought was pretty enlightening, and I would encourage people who might venture into homicide to read it so you know the perspective of the victim's family, because to me, it's important.
Yeah.
There were things that she wrote that I wasn't even thinking then. Things that kind of later I felt bad about a little bit. You get in that mindset of catching the suspect, and sometimes you forget a little bit about the family.
Is this like a memoir, kind of like written as an internal monologue of her thoughts on the whole thing, or? Yeah,
it's called The White Rose of Truth, and her name's Erin White, and she wrote it, and it's like the perspective from a mother who's lost their son,
okay,
and getting the call that early morning on New Year's Day to the end of the trial when they were convicted. So it does tell you a lot about what victims' families are going through. And I've always, after she wrote it, I've always had that in my mind. And if there was someone out there who may listen to this, if you go into that profession and you go into the homicide unit, take a look at it. It'll give you a different idea of how people are feeling about what's going on. And people clamor and demand information. There are things you can tell people and things you can't, because you don't want to mess up the investigation. You want a successful prosecution. But it did enlighten me quite a bit. And they're good friends of mine now, and we have been for a long time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Any true crime podcasts you'd recommend?
You know what? I haven't really listened to any podcasts.
Really?
I mean, it's funny that
this is your first one doing.
Yeah. And I'm going to listen.
And maybe even the first one listening.
Yeah. Yeah, but you know what? I'm interested now. So I'm going to start looking some things up and see what's out there, including yours. I want to hear more of the other ones you've done. I think that's a great thing what you have going on, is getting just normal off-the-street people who do something different for a living. And people can listen in on it, and they get a perspective of that person's profession from their own mouth.
Well, and I think what it is because, to be honest, I never had any idea what I wanted to do. None, except when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I wanted to be an airline pilot for a while. no real idea why. I think I watched Top Gun once with my mom, and like I never wanted to do military. It just never seemed like a good idea for me. But I love planes, and I always wanted to fly. So I was like, cool, yeah, I'll be an airline pilot. And then I found out all the training you have to go through and all the stuff you need to know and like all the hours you have to put in flight time to even get your license and stuff. And I was just like, nah. So that dream kind of went out the window. And then there was a time in my teens when I thought I was going to be a rock star, which I think everybody gets that. But I mean, other than that, I didn't have any idea. No clue. The only reason why I got into auto body seriously is because I needed to do something. I knew I needed to do something. So I went, I think at the behest of my girlfriend at the time, I went on to the NIC's website and I just started looking through their courses. I like cars. I like tinkering with cars. I've always worked on my own cars. So I was like, cool, auto body. Let's do that. That sounds fun. So I signed up, went into that. And of course now the job that I've been doing for 15 years has nothing to do with the technical certificate I got. So, I mean, there's that, but
yeah, you know, I had an idea that I was going to do this for a living. It happened a lot earlier than I thought. I really wanted to stay in the Marine Corps.
Oh, really?
But I didn't want to be a radio operator my entire career.
Yeah.
I wanted to do something cool. Like I want to drive a tank or something, you know. If I'm going to stay in, I want to do something really cool.
A buddy of mine was in the tank battalion. Yeah. They're weird dudes.
But they wouldn't change me. Radio operators was a critical job. Like they couldn't get enough people to do it because you have to pass all this training and some people couldn't do it. And they said, well, yeah, you can re-up, but you have to stay in your MOS. And I said, I'm not doing it. So I ended up getting out, and that's when they were doing this recruiting fair, and that had always been in the back of my mind. So that's how I decided to go about it.
Into getting into law enforcement?
Yeah.
How long did you serve in the Marine Corps?
6 years.
6 years? That's like a standard term, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a podcast I've been listening to. It's called Paradise Lost, and it's called Crime in Miami.
Really?
So it's all about crime. I think they focus a lot about the 80s. So like cartels, the Cuban drug wars and stuff.
Right.
That one's actually pretty good. The guys that do that one, they have a lot of cool, like 80s style music that they play, and I like it. It's pretty good.
I'll have to check that out.
And that one's on, I don't know if it's anywhere other than Stitcher, but it's on Stitcher. And then if you like comedy, one that I recommend to everybody because it's one of my favorites, and I enjoy his comedy, Dan Cummins.
Okay.
So he actually lives here in Coeur d'Alene.
Really?
Yeah. He was born and raised in Riggins, Idaho, and then moved to LA for a while, lived in Spokane, lived in several other places. Now he lives in Coeur d'Alene. But he does a podcast called Time Suck. And so every week he does one about something different. Mostly it's about serial killers and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. But it is hilarious. It is definitely worth listening to, in my opinion. It's great.
Have to check that out.
He is a funny son of a bitch. Cool. Yeah. All right. Joseph, Joe?
Joe.
Do you prefer? Okay.
Joe's fine, yeah.
Well, Joe, thanks for coming in today. Thanks for talking to me. This was a shit ton of fun. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate the offer and the invite because I've never done anything like this before, and now I can say I've done a podcast. Yeah. Well, I mean, I have been thinking about doing some different kind of shows, like I don't want to give away too much, but a couple of buddies of mine, we were thinking about doing a tinfoil hat episode, where we're each going to pick some conspiracy theory, and then we'll split up our time on the show, each talking about that, kind of go round robin with it. But that's pretty cool. Yeah. I mean, who knows what'll come up? I've got some ideas and plans for all kinds of different shit. So, I mean, the door is always open. If you're interested in coming back, I'll keep you on the list. And if something piques our interest or whatever, you'll get another invite for sure. Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. Joe, thanks for coming in. Appreciate it. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your time in the force and for being everything I've heard, I've considered a great officer. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. You're definitely a credit to all of them. Everybody, thank you for listening and keep on grinding.